Got my microphone. Hello, and welcome to the live stream show here at the Hawks Nest. I am picking a little bit of an off time, and I'm sure many of our people are still a little bit at work, but I figure we're going into the 4th of July weekend. We're not going to be doing a live show here on Sunday because you guys will all be out with your friends and family and shooting off fireworks, or in those places like where I'm at, where there's a seemingly a forest fire away at every moment. You will instead be sitting inside and listening to other people illegally let their fireworks as they play around with the law a little bit. But I did want to get a little bit of a live stream show up today to discuss a little bit of Seahawk news that came down the pike this week as far as Tammarion Terry goes. And I think it's going to kind of lead into a little bit of a greater argument here, a greater, I think, bigger debate that's at play here with us Seahawk fans. I don't know if we'll get a lot of people here into the live stream today a bunch. I know all of you are going to be busy doing your weekend festivities, so we will probably keep this pretty short and sweet to a degree. But again, wanted to get some thoughts here out on the man. Scary Terry 2, TNT, the Swamp Monster Seminole, the Tallahassee Tabernacle of Toolsy receivers. This guy was a guy that when you talk about coming out the last end of the draft, I was as high on him as any guy that I was on anybody out of this last draft. I thought the Seattle Seahawks got an absolute steal. I couldn't believe that he had fallen out of the draft. I actually posted up a video over there on my Seahawks scouting channel regarding his play. It's got a lot of views. I think a lot of other people felt pretty similarly to me. In fact, that's a reason I've seen mentioned for a lot of folks, for instance, why there were many Seahawks fans out there, including within my chat, that were saying, no, we don't need to go after Julio Jones. You know, we got Dwayne Eskridge, and then you've still got Tammarion Terry there and Cade Johnson. We're going to be fine at that position. And I think the hype behind Tammarion Terry as a talent was legitimate. 6'3", he runs a 4.4. He jumps out of the gym. He's got ball skills. He's a decent route runner. A little bit of what had happened with DK in college. It's not his fault he hasn't run a multitude of routes. It's just that the coaching staff didn't really ask him to. It was 9 routes all day long. So he had a measure of hope to grow into running route, getting a little bit better in his route running. And he had a lot of things you just can't teach. Can't teach size, can't teach speed, can't teach yak ability. Hell, the guy was even a good gunner. No pun intended. I mean, literally on the film, on his highlight tape as a receiver, you had a cut up of about 5 or 6 plays with him running down on punts as a gunner. We now know that that was a natural fit for the young man. Okay, that's going to be the last joke like that I do. Okay, that's the last gunner joke I pull. But where this all comes down is in the same respect for Seattle, and where we're going to talk about in a second. We'll discuss a little bit of what happened with his situation, but where this is going to lead into is, as I presented up in the title of my YouTube video, is this roster really good enough as it's currently constructed to get to the Super Bowl? We know that this is a roster that's good enough to compete. We know that this is a roster that can go back and win a division again. We know this is a roster that can maybe even go out there and win a playoff game or two. But is it truly a team that can go out there and compete for Super Bowls? And there's many fans out there that that's not as important as the former, as being a consistent winner, as getting to the playoffs. People are I got to acknowledge it, they're out there. There's a wide part of the fan base that loves just being consistently good. They don't want to ever risk falling into that trap door of losing for multiple seasons or going back into Loserville for a decade on end, as once happened to this team, for instance, back in the 90s during our dark ages of the Seahawks history. But why Terry drives this for me is I got to thinking a little bit about this in the respect of positional groupings on this team and whether you've just done good enough this offseason. And that's what this is kind of my bottom line on this too, and to get succinct with it, is that you've taken this roster and you've gotten it to just good enough a state kind of across the board. You look at quarterback, safety, defensive end, tight end, kicker, punter. You can pretty much say that the Seahawks have at least towed the line, gone up to it to where you could say they're above and beyond where they can't really improve past those positions. They've done great there. But there's a whole lot of positions behind that where you still have some openings, where there's still some questions of depth, where 1 or 2 injuries along the way there are going to cause a Titanic-like failure from that positional grouping, which then can upend the whole team as a whole. And I understand that there's a little bit of this, which is the cost of doing business in the NFL. Every team has to kind of face this in some way or another. You got to pick your poison somewhere, so to speak. But when I was looking back at the 2013 roster, for instance, they had the safety position, the running back position, the wide receiver position, the kicker, the punter, the quarterback, the linebacker, the corner, defensive end, defensive tackle. They had almost doubled the amount of positional groupings where you had gone far above the bare minimum to feel like you're good enough. And when I go back to the last 5 or 6 years, many of you have heard me say this over and over again on this channel, I've seen a just good enough approach as it concerns roster building too often. And it seems to me to be a determinable factor to the potential success of our football team in a given season year after year, especially when we get 5, 6 years of data to kind of build off and understand that. And Terry's triggering this for me as far as the receiver group goes. We can look at other positional groups that are concerning on this team, but Terry's triggering this for me on the receiving group because I was already concerned with the receiving group prior to Terry. I know that rookie wide receivers coming onto football teams don't tend to be all that productive. There are those outliers like your Justin Jefferson last year and your CeeDee Lambs last year, but it's not something that you want to always count on happening. And again, we talk about recent history too often. You have looked at not necessarily at the wide receiver position, but especially at the defensive end position lately. You've been relying on production immediately from rookies, which you didn't get even a sniff of. And it ended up costing you and forcing your hand into sort of a desperation maneuver to have to make other trades on the other side of it. It ended up being where you ended up having to pay the piper anyway. It was just double the cost at that time. And right now, Seattle, to me, is in a position of not having to pay double of that cost, but they also seemingly kind of maybe sitting there thinking, nah, we're good enough right now. We got some flexibility if we want to make one move down the road, but we're good enough to compete. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers just went there and won a Super Bowl this last season, and they are the first Super Bowl winning team in the modern era not to lose any starters at all. They've done nothing but bring everybody back, and it wasn't some aging, outside of Tom Brady, it wasn't some aging old roster. It had a relative good mix in there, and they've done nothing but stack and now would add to that roster by what they already had. Are we in a position to compete with them right now? It's hard to see that with your moves. You can definitely, I don't expect them to blow the doors off us. I don't expect us to get blown, but I think Tampa Bay has got us a little bit at an edge point, especially if they were to get the first round bye and home field advantage and you've got to go to Tampa Bay on the road. You'd have a puncher's chance. The roster's got a puncher's chance. And the NFL is built largely upon, getting hot at the end of the season at just the right time, of Lady Luck kissing you on that one good season where your health allows you to just get through the gauntlet of tough teams and get there to the top of the pack. We've seen a few teams that have been able to just sort of almost outlast everybody in getting to that Super Bowl championship. Not every year, but some years it can play out that way. But again, not something that I would want to count on happening. I'd much rather go in the other direction, which is to do everything you possibly can, everything in your hands, everything that's sitting there within reaching distance of you to grab. And it's not to say that if Seattle doesn't jump in the next week or two, they're not willing to do that. It just seems like outside of them getting lucky with a team falling out and then willing to trade a player who's not on the market right now, it seems like a little bit of a risky gamble, especially a risky gamble when so much is built on this upcoming season. I've had some discussions and talks in the chat with folks that tell me we've got to just worry about this year. We've just got to concentrate on this year. Why are you worried about multiple years? And it's the irony when I see those kind of comments put out there where I say, that's exactly what I'm doing. If anything, right now, I've dumped the whole long-term plan approach to this team building, which is not the way my mind would normally work in looking at this team or wanting to see a good long-term hopeful future for this team, because in going forward now, you're paying down the road. I'm only in this mode mainly because, number one, you're in Russell Wilson's prime. You don't have a lot more years with Coach Carroll. The roster as it's currently constructed is constructed to go out there and compete. It's at a sub-Super Bowl competing level. A couple more moves and you're right there kind of over the top on that. So that's one reason. But then the bigger reason, the thing that, again, I think so many are seemingly forgetting here, maybe because Coach Carroll and Russell Wilson have kind of gotten everything soothed over with the appearance of everything being all good now. But this conservative kind of approach they could be coming up to the season where they're sitting on $8 million and they don't convert Russell Wilson's base to bonus money, which would be another $10 million. And say nothing of when they do eventually sign Jamal Adams and Dwayne Brown to contract extensions, you're actually going to save probably an additional $7 million off the cap cumulatively between the two on new deals. That's a whole lot of money you're now leaving out there on the table for a competing team who's in the window, who's going for it right now. If you're playing it that conservative, to me, there seems to be another reason to play there with it. And it's beyond just we want to be a consistent winner and we've got a 3-year plan approach. I'm not buying that in this instant. It feels a lot more to me like we want to keep the stove warm on the Russell situation to next year. We want to kind of feel it out a bit. Boy, that would be a bad direction to take for this upcoming season. And in many ways, I think it would doom this upcoming season, or at least doom it from the aspect, again, of falling just short once again. Being good enough, but not quite great. Being one of the better teams in the league. Being a fun team to watch, an entertaining team. Hell, we're one of the most entertaining teams in the NFL to watch, bar none. Bar none. No doubt. And that's awesome sometimes. When I'm almost having a heart attack as I'm getting older now, it's not great in other times. But I hope that the Seahawks, whether it's now or whether it's before the trade deadline, they eat that cap space up. They convert that Russell Wilson base to bonus, and they go out there and they make every last move you can make. Understanding that if you fail this season and you go back to square one next year by going out and now having to try to find your franchise quarterback. You guys think this roster next year with Russell Wilson moving on, with Sam Darnold at the helm, is going to get it done? Or a rookie quarterback is going to get it done? I think we're more likely at that point looking at what all these people who want to be consistent winners, the thing that they want, that they are most fearful of, is the thing I'm trying to help them to keep them out of. Because if you do go to a lost season this next year, if things do go sideways, then you are looking at more likely than not a 3 to 4 year rebuild. You're looking at Carroll moving on. Now you got to find a new coach. Now you got to find a new quarterback. Oh, those are easy to find, right? Those just grow on trees. How can we avoid that? How can we get out ahead of that? By going for it now. Right now. We'll see if they do. Let's bounce on over the chat here. I took a long-winded approach there on that, but thank you for all jumping in on prior to July 4th here on the chat. I do appreciate it, and let's go which other direction you want to go today, guys. I can bounce around wherever. We can talk a little more about the Tamarion Terry if you guys want. There's not a lot to unpack there. I'll tell you what, the Florida law enforcement does not like Seattle Seahawks players. I think if we could take anything away from it, it's that we're just going to need to tell our players to stay out of Florida. Because they've got some kind of, I don't know if we beat Miami one year and it just got stuck in the Chiefs' craw, but it's it's getting old, huh? Basham, how you doing? Good to see you. Luke Sims, you are number 2, and Apostate Russ, you are number 3. Good to see you guys. Rick Sabeto, what do you think of the Heat? I think that I'm doing fine with it over here on the eastern side of it. I think you folks over on the western side of Washington have it in much worse shape because many of you don't get AC because it's some years there's no need past 1 or 2 days out of the year. It's hard to necessarily jump for that kind of situation, something you got to maintain. So I'm doing good over here. I got AC. I'm chilling, working on the tan, but it's hot. It's hot. 110 in Washington is it's crispy. It's a little crispy. I'm not gonna lie. You know, it's getting red, but you know, we got to suck this heat up here in Washington. We get 3 months of it a year. You better just sponge that thing up. Hopefully you're doing okay, Rick. Ahmad, how you doing? Good to see you. Luke, I'm actually early this time, laughing out loud. Well, good to see you in here, Luke. I was hoping maybe a little bit, Luke, with the earlier time today. I'm trying to catch some folks. I know at certain times I'm locked in at that 5 o'clock time on Sundays, and not everybody's available and ready to go. So, yeah. Fish, I'm kind of sad we cut Terry. I'm sad by it too. I had a lot of hope for this kid. If he had balled out, you would have a very young player on the rise on a rookie contract, not just a rookie contract, an undrafted rookie free agent contract, which would be very nice to carry him along for that for the next 3 or 4 years. He had a ton of potential. There was no doubt about it. And there was a reason he went undrafted as well, though. And maybe there was a lot of those NFL team PIs out there on the case, and they had already cracked this one. Even though we're hearing that supposedly no NFL teams were aware of the situation, you got to think with the money that they pay some of those PIs to dig, that one of those probably got some goods on it, and that caused a few teams to maybe bail on the process there. But it sucks. Seahawks had to cut him at the time. The only hope here maybe is that with it being 8 or 9 other people involved in this situation, being brought in and charged, it's how many people does it take to kill one person? It's like, my goodness, there's 11 people charged here. But maybe they're just trying to shake the tree and get somebody to flip on somebody else, and that maybe they're hoping and going out there and getting a guy just who signed it with an NFL team and Terry, that's going to put a little bit of pressure on. Which it very well could. We'll see how it plays out. But it's not, maybe he ends up returning too if things get, settled on the situation and he gets I forget there's a $10 handle word for when you get exonerated. There we go. That's the word. Clara, good to see you, Clara. How you doing out there in New York? She says hello from New York. Hope you guys aren't burned up like we are over here. I don't have a pretty heavy schedule. Can you do a video on trans? We will be playing trans. We will be playing besides Steelers and Colts. Clara, can you re-put that in there? Can you do a video on trans? We will be playing besides Steelers trans. I think you mean a video on I guess just repost that again, Clara. I didn't quite understand what you meant on that one. AI, good to see you on here, AI. How you doing? Devin, right on. Glad you're on today. I want to get on today. I'm not going to have a chance on Sunday, so I can't go a week without talking to you folks. I can't go a week without talking to you. We got to get this on here. We got to figure this out. Clara says we still need corners. Clara, I don't disagree with you. And part of what I've said with this is, though I'm concerned with the receiver position, I understand where we stand now in this offseason, being free agency's gone, the draft is gone, there's not a lot of people out there on the market. I will go out and upgrade this team by any means possible. So if it's going outside of those other positions I already mentioned, outside of essentially defensive end, maybe tight end, safety, but everything else to me is on the table as far as upgraded. Defensive end, defensive tackle would be one that I'd look at. Linebacker. I mean, it's just whatever you can do at this point to upgrade the team further. You have the cap space to do it. You're a little bit light on draft picks going into next year, not down a first round pick. But look, it's sometimes that's too bad, so sad. Not having draft picks shouldn't stop you from making a move if again the intention needs to be pushing again for Super Bowls this year and not just to compete. Rating tacos, not sure Tamarion Terry matters. History tells us Pete knows talent. Not many guys we've cut have gone on to do much. Well, I don't think rating tacos that this is a situation. In fact, this is pretty much with 100% certainty we can say this. This is not a situation where Tamarion Terry's being cut because of talent. If a player gets charged for murder in the NFL, they're going to be cut. Pretty much anybody. It would take basically an MVP type level guy to not get into being in that position. So it's sort of this had nothing to do with positional play. It had everything to do with the seriousness of the charge and the fact that that's what that brings by getting that kind of charge. I do think Tamarion Terry matters in the respect of this. You're going into this season down David Moore, and then you flipped in Dwayne Eskridge for him. If Dwayne Eskridge goes out and has basically the season that David Moore had statistically last year, you're going to feel like that was a pretty successful year out of a rookie Dwayne Eskridge. But the problem is your receiver position kind of fell a little bit short last year. It's nice to have the top end talent with 100 catches out of Lockett and DK Metcalf pushing for 1,350, but we're going to be playing an extra game next season. If already over the last 2 years you could have said, man, we could have used an injection of talent in that receiver room, and you said that already the previous years when it was one less game you're having to play during the year, say nothing of if we happen to sustain an injury. What if DK Metcalf goes down in week 3? And you've got Tyler Lockett and Dwayne Eskridge as your 1 and 2. If all of you out there that are so confident where we're standing, like, you will really feel confident at that point? You'll feel like we're still at a point to push for competing for a Super Bowl? And I don't want it to happen, but look, injuries occur. And that's what I've talked about here with this is about adding talent and then adding good talent depth-wise. Not just adding depth, but adding depth that can go out there and not just fall off a cliff. As kind of happened when you got to bring a guy out like Malik Turner in 2019 in a very key playoff game on the road in Lambeau, driving down in the fourth quarter. Third down, you need it. No other chances, you need it. No other shot, you need it. Russell throws a picture-perfect pass right into the chest plate of Malik Turner, and it bounces out of his hands. Now, if that's, rather than being an undrafted try-hard, but a talented guy, a guy with actually ability there, do you go on to win that game? And then do you have a better season at that point? Does your season have a better success rate? Because you would have gone on to play San Francisco if you got through that Packer game. A San Francisco team who, frankly, the Seahawks were kind of in their head at that time. This is where I look at it, is looking at 2 or 3 lanes down the road, not just where you stand now, but what could be, what is likely to happen. Tyler Lockett has broken down over the last 2 seasons, and he's only gotten older. I do agree with you, though, Randy Tacos. I do trust Pete when he releases a guy that guy's not probably going to be all that good. I think once he's done with the guy from that standpoint, I do agree with you there. I just disagree in the respect of I don't think that's what drove this situation in particular. TJ, how you doing, TJ? It's good to see you on in, buddy. Ryan, what's going on? Can this season come any slower? Laughing out loud. June crawled. June absolutely crawled. It's been just, this offseason especially has been so slow. I don't know why. Usually you get around spring and things start, kind of cooking. You get busy, something happens, you blink, and suddenly a month's gone by. But I felt every week of June, and it seems like we're still 4 weeks away almost here. Goodness. Fish, a good gunner, hilarious. I was sitting on that one, Fish. I ain't gonna lie. Enrique, thoughts on Josh Gordon? Probably he is getting reinstated. Well, hey, at least we get a little bit of good news then. I didn't see that, but if that is the truth, Enrique, that is awesome to hear. I'm 100% on board with him with signing up to Josh Gordon. It's the quintessential deal that I will always love to have and I will never pass on, which is all upside, no downside, low cost. When you're putting those three things are coming into play, brother, I'm perfectly fine taking my share of risks at that point. Because if they give you great production, it's cheap. And if they go sideways, if they try to break up a locker room, if they spit on a reporter, you cut them. You say, c'est la vie, goodbye. And it doesn't cost you a thing to do so. So if you're able to bring back Gordon, it'd be on a 1 year, $1 million deal, non-guaranteed money. And if he steps out of line, he's out. But if you add his type of talent, that is what I'm talking about. He is more talented than Freddie Swain. He is better than Dwayne Eskridge. You pair him up with Russell Wilson, honestly, as a number 2 wide receiver, and I'm not all that certain that he wouldn't be, if he was just allowed to play 16 full games and Russell Wilson would be a number 2 wide receiver, I'm not all that unconvinced he wouldn't be more productive than Tyler Lockett in the number 2 wide receiver role. I don't know if he'll get that chance. I don't know if having this much time off the football field has, eroded his skills to some degree as he's gotten just a little bit older, still a sub-30-year-old guy. He came into this league really young. But I'm in on that, Enrique. I'm in. Again, when you talk about upgrading the team at this point, you can't get to the picky state of mind like you could at the beginning of the offseason. When you're looking at all that cap space, and you're looking at all those draft picks and all those players that are going to flood the market in free agency, we're past that point now. It's light. It's lean. Beggars can't be choosers. And while we might not be in a begging state as a football team, we're in a little bit of a, if you could just give us a little bit, what do you guys got? Maybe just a little bit. Anything else you guys got here? Just a few more things we could buy? Just a few more, just to kind of set up the supplies a little bit, just to round them off a little bit. Darius Brown. How you doing, Darius? Still could be proven innocent, and Alden might just play this season. Very true, Darius. And that's what I would mention with Tammarion Terry. It's a great point, which is that if this thing does go away, and let's face it, when you start hearing Darius, 8 other people being indicted, you start to get a little bit like, okay, what's going on here? And I don't give the floor. I'll give some law enforcements maybe the benefit of the doubt, but that Florida law enforcements, they do some weird stuff down there. Like last year with the whole Dunbar situation and how they played that. I mean, they definitely play a little bit of, especially they like to play a little bit of the media game. They can get themselves up in some headlines, it seems like. They're perfectly happy to do so. But it's weird with getting 8 people. Were all 8 people firing out of the car? Or 8 people new? Do you had 8 people in one car? Or do you had 8 people in 2 total cars? And now, why now? It was 2018. That this is just coming out now. And it's awful convenient that it comes out just now when one of the people supposedly involved happens to now become signed as an NFL football player. Very strange. Very, very strange. We'll have to see it play out. But you're right, Darius, if he is innocent, I would expect him to still be able to bounce back over to Seattle at that point. I think if they'll say, hey, he's exonerated. Why not? Beast Hunter, what's up, bro? What's up, Beast Hunter? How you doing? Bash M, I heard Josh Gordon could be reinstated and passed all drug tests this month and hoping he could be on the practice squad by minicamp. He has seemingly remained around Seattle. We've seen a lot of his Instagram and stuff, and the guy has stayed within Seattle. He loves Seattle. It seems like he's really resonated with the football team and the environment and atmosphere that's there. Again, no risk, all upside, low cost. A guy who knows he's on his last chance. I mean, this is why I like the Robert Nkemdiche deal. Robert Nkemdiche is a first-round talent. You have on a veteran minimum deal who you have no other player like him on your roster that is that big and moves like him for a position that's in need at 3-tech right now. So if he blows up, it's amazing. It's great. Cost you nothing. Cheap roster building. It's a beautiful way to build yourself to a Super Bowl type contending roster. So nothing not to love if you bring back Josh Gordon. There's some people that I'm so done with him. I'm not counting on anything with him. I'm not slotting him in as my number 2. He can come in there and compete. I want to just come back to the compete mantra. I just want to come back to the foundations of the team. Why think you're just good enough? Why give a guy a starter role? Why not have another guy in there behind him who can push him? Isn't that going to make him better? Isn't that what they've told us? Iron sharpens iron, steel grinds steel, whatever the hell that stupid phrase is. Well, let's see it play out. So bring in Josh and get yourself another receiver. I would stop there. I wouldn't stop there. But it's good news, Bashem. At least we get a little bit of a silver lining to this dark news of Terry. Raining Tacos is done with Flash. He says, no more Flash. Move on, please. Maxwell Stern, what happened to Terry? Maxwell, 2018, there was a drive-by shooting. At that time, one of those guys got caught and nailed for being one of the shooters. I'm guessing he kept quiet at that point because the Florida police still believed that there were other shooters at play during that time period. He's gone to jail, been convicted, the first guy, as I understand it. Now we've arrived here recently in this last week and something seemingly shook free, or they're trying, I think, to shake the tree a little bit and get all these people in and see if they can put the pressure and put the nails to them and get one of them to flip over and then start a domino process to get the rest to flip over if that's what they think will happen. But at this point, Maxwell, we don't know. And we don't know if really Terry was involved. We know that he did have some off-the-field questionable concerns coming up to the draft. And that's the part where I'll always say, when you're looking at these prospects and stuff, I'm always looking at what they do on the field. I'm not going to start to try to dig in and play Brandon P.I. over here. You know, I'm not going to start wearing a fedora and smoking cigarettes and drinking whiskey out of a flask, right? That's not going to be me. I'm not going to get into these guys' history and be like, well, he doesn't. You hear rumors, and that's where you about leave it from if that's where you're going to hear it. You just try to evaluate them on the team. And if some of these teams hear stuff that we don't hear, and then we learn about it later on. I don't know if teams knew about it with him, but that is unfortunately what does seem to have happened here, Maxwell, is our guys getting hit for something that happened back around to freshman year in college. Pretty far back, man. Very odd. I haven't heard anything exactly like this happen before. But then last year, I hadn't heard anything like NFL players supposedly going into a party and holding it up because they didn't like how the crap game results went. And so they were just going to go. I've never heard any of these kind of things happen before. So it's all new territory for us here. I tell you, Seahawks do not keep it boring. They're never boring. And Beast Hunter, I appreciate you subbing. Thank you so much. You're awesome for doing that. I do appreciate it. Ahmad says, I believe we can at least make it to the divisional round. I agree too. I see this being a team that can, as it's currently constructed, though I'm not certain that it's a team that can get to the Super Bowl contending state. I certainly think it's a team that can go out there and be a winning team, a division winner, and win, even top out better than you've topped out over the last 5 or 6 years. To your point being, to the division round. Can they get to the conference championship? Can they win the conference championship? That's the part, I guess, as much as anything. Maybe I'm looking for what you guys might have to say as this as well, but where I stand is kind of no. I don't know if you might just get to the conference championship if everything breaks right. If injuries break right, Aaron Rodgers decides to retire or force them to trade him. But I don't know if where you're standing right now, it's been quite enough. I see a lot of positions that are kind of light, don't have a lot of top end talent on the other end of it, where you could have done a little bit better right now. And if they were pushed up against the cap, if they had no draft picks to give, I'd say, well, it is what it is. We got to make our bed with it. They made their bed. Now we got to sleep in it. But that's not the case. You're sitting on basically a de facto, in my opinion, of somewhere in the neighborhood of about $22 to $25 million, if not more. That's a pretty good cushion to be sitting on. Hope you're having a good day, Beast Hunter. Rating Tacos, this roster is definitely good enough to compete for it all, but not good enough to be a favorite. It's another team that needs to really buy in and get some lucky breaks. Very succinctly put, Raining Tacos, and I agree with you. Things got to go right in the right direction for this team to get to the Super Bowl. It can happen. Even though I disagree with the approach of going in that direction and just saying, it's a crapshoot no matter what we do, let's just ride this out and see how it goes, I have to acknowledge the fact that it has had some success for those teams in the past where things, like your Eagles team that beat the Patriots a couple years ago, where things just got hot at the right time. Certainly losing your quarterback was tough, but Foles was on that magic carpet ride run at that point in time. And it kind of didn't matter. They got through their other team. The rest of their team was just also so hot at that point in time. Everybody was just cooking. But, I'd agree with that, man. I agree with that. I don't know if it would take a lot of breaks going right to get to the Super Bowl. You need Tom Brady to have his elbow blow out, Aaron Rodgers to retire if we're talking about them getting to the Super Bowl, or a huge amount of injuries on Tampa Bay, let's say, and Brady still plays, something like that to kind of get there at this point. Darius says, Rams lost more than they've gained this offseason. Cards brought in a bunch of injury-prone players. 49ers rookie and teams are very overrated. Darius, I'm in agreement with you 100% on this, and I don't contend at all that we couldn't win a division, that we should win the division, and we should be the it surprises me, Darius, where you hear a lot of the pundits out there nationally who don't even come close to putting us as the favorites for the division, because it's like, for the reasons you just mentioned, why wouldn't we be? They get caught up with the Rams with the splashiness of Stafford, with the bright new shiny toyness of Trey Lance, and then the Cardinals going out for the elderly home and guys that were, if this was 6 years ago, I might be a little more scared if they were getting them. But I do agree. I don't think the rest of the division has done as much as we have done. And I will say this, as down as I may be on the top end upside of this team and getting to a Super Bowl, I will say that they have done better this offseason than any recent offseason, in my opinion. You look at the majority of the moves, and they're plus moves. They're moves that they may not be these grand slam home runs, but solid doubles down the line. Solid doubles. It's just that you needed to kind of get a little bit more ahead here off the season, especially when you look at kind of a couple of the teams that are sort of at the top, and specifically looking at Green Bay and Tampa Bay, that would be your top competition to get in the Super Bowl and top competition to get in through that first round bye. Especially understanding that there's been times here where Green Bay recently has given us some troubles. And so I just a little bit more for that top end. Bleed Blue and Green says DK plus TNT equals corners shit in their drawers and DC nightmares. I love it, man. Too bad the TNT they've just taken, the Florida police just took a big bottle of water and poured it over our TNT. Rain Taco says if Eskridge gets 400 yards and a couple TDs, it's a win for a rookie wide receiver. I'd agree, but I think a lot of people out there raining tacos are thinking that Eskridge is going to go out there and push it like 700-800 yards, like double that amount. And I think that that's not realistic to what he's really going to do in a first year and kind of just coming onto the scene. And hey, maybe Lockett and DK can be healthy for 17 whole games of a season and all through the playoffs. Maybe. Hasn't played that way out exactly recently, but okay, maybe. I think, though, that you got to add a little bit more than that. Ryan Dallas, I'm really for once. Good to see you, Ryan. How you doing? Glad to have you in here. Getting some new faces in. I figured we'd get some folks in who couldn't normally get it on the show. Christian Joyce. How you doing, Christian? You are bullish about the Hawks' chances this year. Oh, sorry, Christian. My chat just went. Hold on 1 second here. You are bullish about the Hawks' chances this year, but the bookies have us as third in the division. Are we blowing smoke up our asses? Well, it's something that we've talked about a lot, Christian, to try to unpack this over recent weeks. And I think we really haven't, from a speculative standpoint. Now, look, Christian, we get Rams fans in my chat here. I get Cardinal fans in my chat, Niner fans in on the chat, though the chat usually runs them out quickly, as you do. But the thing that I come back to again and again is we can go through a lot of different lanes here. Why is it that we as a team that were 2 games better than the next team behind us last year to win the division? And I understand we lost in the playoff game, and maybe that's where we need to, everyone's taking the final theme of one game, but I would argue that when you talk about maybe being prophetic about who's going to be a division winner into the next season, you shouldn't be basing it on one single game. I know it's the game that was the most recent game in your memory, but you rather probably should base it off of the whole prior season a little bit so you have a little more data to go off of. With football as it is, it's a sample size type sport. I don't have 162 games like baseball. I don't have 82 games like basketball. I've got 16 and now 17 games in a season to make assessments about players and teams. So when you go ahead and you look at last season and you say, I'm going to look at the one playoff game they had where they crapped the bed and everybody was in their bag, and it was against a division foe who'd already seen them twice that year and had a lot of familiarity with them. And we already know division games are always usually a crapshoot because of that said familiarity. I don't take that away in the same way that these pundits do. I do think Stafford will make the Rams a little bit better, Christian, but we've talked about the Rams. There's 2 other things that nobody seems to want to own here, and I haven't seen one Ram fan own this. Not one that's come in the chat has owned this. Not one. It gets washed over time and time and time again. You added Stafford and lost Goff. I'll give you that. That's a bit of an improvement. You're not getting Stafford at 29. You're getting Stafford at 33 plus years of age and getting older and more injury prone. We'll see how that plays out. Because your offensive line's also getting older and more injury prone. We'll see how the combination of those two things work. But beyond that, you lost 7, 8, 9 coaches this offseason. Teams historically lose coaches. Do they usually bounce back, Christian, the next season and dominate? Not usually. You lost starters and safeties, nearly star safety, Jalen Johnson. Top end slot corner, Troy Hill. Starting linebacker, Samson Ekubon. A one tech for a decade there, Michael Brockers. Your starting center in Austin Blythe. Your backup running back. Your fourth string wide receiver. We can keep going down the list, but the point is they didn't add other additions to mend these losses. They had no money to spend. They had no draft picks to pick. They've been trading them away over the last couple of years. But they're just going to be better because of Stafford. Seems kind of a simplistic approach, Christian, whereas with Seattle, I can say, oh, Gerald Everett, Gabe Jackson, brought back Chris Carson. You're getting back Darrell Taylor, Marquise Blair, 2 high second-round picks that didn't even see the field last year. Get another year of Jamal Adams back in the mix with a whole offseason and training camp and everything, a year of data to go off of how to best utilize him. Khalil Witherspoon. I don't know. I look at the David Moore and Jaron Reed are your basic losses this season. KJ Wright. To me, that's not a huge enough of losses versus the pluses, and say nothing about the true X factor here, Christian, which is the addition of Shane Waldron. You've added an offensive coordinator this offseason, and this is one thing that I've said. Shane Waldron, over and over, I've said this, Christian, he is the biggest addition of this offseason beyond anything personnel-wise. And I'll say it's very simplistic to put it this way, but it's the real deal. You're taking your offense from 1980s to 2021. You can't undersell the impact of that. Teams for the last 10 years have been able to play us defensively from a certain standpoint, a certain understanding, a certain expectation for what they could expect on the field. That's all going to get flipped on its ear. Maybe not 180 degrees, but enough so in an impact that it's going to catch a lot of teams off guard and struggle in order to find a wrinkle or a way to stop of it. Because instead of the offense now being an approach of, yeah, you might see what we got. Yeah, you might see what we're going to do. But we're such badasses, we're going to be successful anyway. You're going from that offensive approach to, oh, you want to take away the deep ball? We'll just hit you with short stuff. Oh, you want to take away the short stuff? We'll hit you with the deep ball. Oh, you're going to go cover 2? We'll run the ball. Oh, you bring the safety up into the box. You go single high. We're tagging you over the top. That offense, that secondary offense, that's a modern offense. The prior offense, that was the 80s offense. That was the caveman offense. That was the, we smash you in pain. We gonna win. That was dumb. Dumb. So that's where I come from with Christian. You can go to the other two teams like somebody else posted above Christian. The Niners didn't really take any monstrous step forward this offseason. Their biggest addition, Alex Mack, has gotten very old over there on the offensive line. Really, in my opinion, he's not able to pass protect like he once was able to. They didn't lose any coaches, and certainly I think Shanahan's a great coach. But with the Niners, recently, historically speaking, it's not like they've been great historically. Why do they get the benefit of the doubt? They had 1 year in 2019, they went to the Super Bowl where they were one of the most healthiest teams in the NFL. Then last year, they get injured and they're nothing. And the year before, 2019, they were nothing enough to get the first pick in the draft. So I don't understand why they're considered consistently this great team when they had the 1 year where they're consistently good. I understand they did well against the injuries last year to the tune of becoming mediocre. Big whoop. And with the Cardinals, I don't buy into Kyler Murray. I don't buy into adding older players and expecting that impact to put you over the top. I don't see them as rounding out that roster in the way they really need to fully round it out. They need to do less splashy signings, less of an A.J. Green, less of a J.J. Watt, and more of, again, like what Seattle would have done, which is more of a doubles approach and just building out the roster further. I also have questions with Cliff Kingsbury and whether or not really his offense is going to be able to work in the NFL, and whether or not he had really earned the right to have a job in the NFL, whether he really had the track record to earn being given what he was given versus, let's say, other guys out there that might be a little bit more qualified. I hope that was a long answer, Christian, but I hope I got there on it. Bodine Lynchfield. Good to see you, Bodine. You're 100% right. We need 1 or 2 more moves to tip the balance. It's a freaking arms race. Justin Houston is still out there. Atkins still out there. And we need to make a big move on one more weapon. Glad you agree with me, Bodine. I mean, that's it. And I'm not going to be, like I said, I ain't in a Pickyville. I ain't in a pickyville. I think you've got to do this with a by any means necessary approach. Can't make excuses. Can't say, well, I think we're actually okay at that. We'll be fine. Get it. Get what you need. Get what you can do. Do what you can here. There's a little bit of a desperation approach. And again, why? Just because I want the team to be good next year, because I want a Super Bowl team next year selfishly? Yes, I did. That's part of it. But then the other part of it is I want the team to remain together for the foreseeable future. Because I think if you, despite the fact that I don't always love everything Carroll does, and despite the fact that I don't always love the things that what Russell Wilson does, I think the pairing of the two of them together into the foreseeable future with some of the changes that have been made here this past offseason, essentially into that offensive side of things, gives you the best potential success for not only this next year, but into the immediate future as well. The other side of it, the flip side of that coin, I can't say that with that much confidence. That's kind of where I'm trying to go on the bottom line with this. Apostate Russ says, Josh Gordon just filed for reinstatement. He knew I was about to do my show. I said, Josh, I'm about to do my show. File that thing, man. File that thing. I love it. You guys are putting me in a good mood. See, this is why I do my show. I go do the show, and you guys always put me in a good mood. You got some good, nice bit of information I hadn't been aware of, and makes me smile. I love it because I know Josh is coming back to us if the NFL grants it. Now, at this point, we've got to acknowledge that Goodell's got a bone to pick with with Gordon, right? Like, I don't know if Gordon slept with his first daughter. I don't know if he slapped his grandma. I don't know what happened, but he's obviously pissed Goodell off in a way that's very unique to any other player that I've ever seen, because they have brought that hammer down on Josh over and over and over again. So hopefully there's some kindness left in Rodgers' heart. Hopefully there's a little tiny slice like the Grinch. He's got that little itty bitty left, just enough of a little bleep there that can grow out. Let Josh back in. Come on. What are you doing here? Don't be punitive, NFL. You've let so much worse people who've done so many worse things, who are still probably doing some worse thing out there, playing on the football field right now, that to hold Gordon out is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I know some people are over him. I know some people don't want to hear it. Let's move on. But that's why I have a little bit of patience for this guy, is I don't think it's just him, the failure of the test. I also think it's a little bit of the Gestapo commissioner's office and the way that they operate. And especially as they decide, they sort of pick and choose who they want to be hard on and who they want to be a little bit hard on. And he feels like he's gotten a little bit more of a twisting of the knife than some other guys have. Jeffrey Nicholson says, if Gordon is reinstated, should Pete give him another chance? He'd be a good wide receiver 4. He would, and you're not going to find a talent like him probably anywhere else in a trade until you wait till probably about week 4, 5, or 6 and one of those contenders falls off who has a very good receiver. And even then, there may not even be a guy at talent level you can go and grab. Marty F.M. Williams. How you doing, Marty? Good to see you in there. He says the answer is yeah. Brando 2345. If Josh Gordon comes back, does that put Eskridge at 4 and Swain at 5? Probably, but is that good or bad? Yes, number one. That would put, if Gordon comes back and he's healthy and he's rolling, that puts probably Eskridge into that 4th role. But I'm going to put an asterisk on that, though, because while it does put him in that 4th role, it puts him into a role situation more than it puts him into a depth chart spot. And what I mean by that is you will have him kick returning, you'll have him punt returning, and then you'll selectively be inserting him into the lineup in slot positions. You go 4 wide, he'll be in, but 3 wide, you'll have him in at times, especially when you're probably going to want to run some of that end around stuff. Because I would bet, I'm going to make a wild guess here, that Eskridge, of any of the receivers we have on the roster right now, even if you were to add Gordon, runs that end around better than any receiver we've got on the roster. And that's a big play within the designs of this new offense. It's going to be utilized in a much more aggressive fashion than it was prior. Where, how many times did we see Lockett coming across the formation prior to the snap, and you knew he wasn't getting the ball by Russ. You knew Russ was going to fake it, or Locke would do this move with his hands, right? Like he's going to get the ball, but he wasn't getting the ball. We all knew it. And I think you're going to get a lot more of a just committing to the willingness to run that. And that's Eskridge all day. So he would be in for that. So that's where I like this, is you put him in number 4, but then he still ends out the season as getting a lot of touches in the kick and punt return game. Maybe he gets 20, 25, 30 carries over the course of a season. If not, maybe a little bit more. And then you find a way to manufacture him on bubble screens and third downs, maybe in certain select matchups that fit right for you. You can kind of insert him in and get him 20, 25 catches over the course of the season as well. rookies do tend to take a little bit of time to develop. And this is along what Coach Carroll did at USC. Is one of the big ways that he was able to drop that lure out there for those recruits and get those 5-star guys over to USC in the early days when USC wasn't really good when he walked in the door and he was turning the program around. He didn't have those 5 stars just clamoring to come in. And so one of the things that he would do with these 5-star guys, he says, not only will we not redshirt you, but we will find a role for you in that first year. We will carve this role out. That will be what you do. You're not going to go beyond that because we want to protect you a little bit. But that will be your role. You'll get out on the field and start to go, so you'll start to generate that buzz for your draft status right from kind of the jump. I think that they would do something similar with Eskridge, and I'm a proponent of that. I think it's a good role to fit him in, rather than forcing him into a 3 role where he's the slot receivers de facto, and he's getting a ton of targets, ton of hits, all the end around stuff, all the bubble screen stuff, and it may just be to where it mounts up to be too many touches a little bit. You need a little bit more of a load balance. Bofield Lynchfield. Last year, people forgot that we had Philip Dorsett and Josh Gordon. Think those guys would have made a big difference last year, even with that horrible play calling shot he had. It might have, Bodine. I wasn't as high as on Philip Dorsett. He had a very good year. He had an okay year coming off the Patriots. It was more of an efficient year than it was a really good year. He was just very efficient. He's never a guy that really lived up to his first-round status, and he never shown it on the football field for me to generate the kind of confidence to feel like you're good at the position. I felt like he was a flyer guy, a guy that had kind of undersold on his career a little bit, had still that potential maybe within him, and maybe you could tap into him, but you didn't really know what you're going to get. It's a little bit like what you would see with John Ross coming out of Cincinnati this last offseason. Very similar in my opinion. But yeah, I think Josh Gordon was one that caught them off guard, and I think that was why, though also I would say, Bodine, I wouldn't have relied on Josh Gordon last season. I wouldn't have gone into offseason saying, okay, we know he's suspended right now, but we'll absolutely count on him being ready day one. The commissioner's office will completely let him go, or by halfway into the year, which you even knew he was going to be suspended at least halfway through the season last year. I think you can't do that. I think you would have to bring in Gordon and then look for something else in addition. I would stack it up in that way. I think the receiver core at some point, my instinct on this is going to get a little bit thin this year. An injury is going to hit. A lot of Seahawks fans are going to be surprised at that time, go, oh man, I thought we were good, but now we're not. Oh no. And Kay Johnson's not great enough yet. And boy, we got Eskridge and Lockett out there. Man, I wish we'd just gotten something more. And that's what I'm trying to get out ahead of right now. Because that's to me, that's what's coming down the tracks. That's the damsel in distress tied to the train tracks. And we're the conductor coming down. And we can hit that brake right now, or we can just keep plowing on forward. And I'm advocating hitting the brake. Seahawks Jose Rodriguez says, hey, how you doing, Jose? It's good to see you, my guy. Jeffrey Nichols says, 33 watching, 8 likes. Let's get those likes going, guys and gals. Thank you for mentioning that, Jeffrey. I do appreciate that. If you like what you're hearing, please hit that like button. It does help us out. Even if you're watching this on replay, it does help the channel out a lot by hitting those likes because it gets me showing up on those search results. Hope you're doing good, Jose. Been killing it on the vids lately. I've been watching, just not commenting, so hope you're keep it up, man. Keep it going. Juno, what's up, B? How you doing, Juno? Glad I'm catching the live feed. Will you be doing some film breakdown of our new additions into free agency on your second channel? Obviously, only if you have some spare time. Could be a cool idea. I do need to do something like that, Juno. So I've been sort of just disregarding the second channel a little bit, but that's a great idea. And yeah, I was gonna maybe I was thinking of doing a little bit of I was actually going to do a little bit of the Robert Kimdichie I was thinking of doing, but I think, yeah, a little bit. I mean, Gerald Everett and get a couple worked in, but yeah, let me work on them. Those are pretty easy to put the videos together. That's kind of why I want to do that channel, Juno. So it's not as much work, kind of putting that together, but yeah, I'll look at getting 1 or 2 of those put out here. Great suggestion. Raining Taco says, Russ isn't leaving. That's a tired subject also. It's not a tired subject, Raining Tacos. And I'm not usually a guy that's going to take a hardline stance to say, like, well, you could be right, I could be wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. If you sit there right now and you think everything's been resolved, Raining Tacos, and you think all is well, everything is great, kumbaya has happened, and bridges have been mended, and now it's nothing but the future. If that's the case, why haven't they converted the base to bonus? Why? Why are they keeping the door open to next year being able to move on from Russ at less a cap hit than it would cost this year? I follow this stuff as closely as anybody else, Raining Tacos. And frankly, this is one of those times where I'll pull the card. I was calling this stuff out back in the draft of 2019. Back Jordan Brooks on the day he was selected, I said, Russell Wilson leaving Seattle could be coming a lot sooner than you're all thinking. And people like yourself say those same things. Say those same things over and over. Never could leave. He could never go. There's no chance. You're crazy. That's what they told me at that time. And then it hit a lot of those folks who said that this offseason upside their head. Caught them completely surprised. You know, I've already been right on this one time around the bend. You know, I'm going to be proven right again on this. If Seattle goes through this season and they maintain that flexibility of being able to move on from Russ, and you top out this season raining tacos as a one and done, or you don't make the playoffs, or you're in 10-7, Russell will request a trade and he will leave this offseason. This is not speculative. This is not hopeful. This is not what I want. It's far from what I want, actually, raining. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And if they converted the base to bonus, I wouldn't, because I know that would be a little bit of a measure towards them doing that. But take away the words for a second, because I'm old enough to know in life, you got to not listen to what people say. You got to watch their actions, because the actions tell the truth. And when you look at the actions of the situation, no base has been converted. No contract's been restructured. There's been no movement whatsoever. It's just gone quiet. It's just gone into seemingly a ceasefire state. This is why I'm concentrating on it, Reno, and this is why it's driving a little bit of the methodology into this next season, because I don't want to see that come down the pike. I'd like to do nothing more than not talk about it anymore and put it to bed. But again, I see those same people popping in telling me, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, who I'm sure a year from now, Rainey, you'll be in here giving me credit that time. Or will you be, well, it happened. Who could have seen it coming? Is that what I'll hear? Jeffrey, some of the best in-depth hot content. Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate it. Juno, and what do you think there are any, Juno says, and also, do you think there are any candidates for a trap game on our schedule? Trap game. Probably one of those home games could be a trap game when you look at it. I would think that the division games are always going to get them up. There's not really a game there where you're going to look at it and you're going to, okay, that one's going to get me. The road games are pretty tough, which, probably is going to put you in a position of not thinking. I could see, I'm looking a little bit at the schedule here just to remind myself a bit here. I could see a little bit of the Saints game being a trap game, because I don't think they'll be very good this year. You're playing them around mid part of the year, right? And it's a game where it's coming just on the heels of you being on the road and the Steelers coming back across the country. You could be seeing the Steelers there with Taysom Hill and thinking, we're feeling okay, but they're like that snake that's like kind of starting to die, but still got a lot of venom left in its fangs. I feel like it could still strike out and hit you. And so while I think I would expect us to beat them, that would be the one game that kind of jumps out because it's at home, because they're kind of Peyton knows kind of how to attack this defense, and they'd be a little bit of a wild card. There's that Jameis Winston wild card too in the background on it. Other than that, not really anything else. I think you take care of business at home. I think you're on guard for the Titan and Viking games, so it's not really a game. Those aren't really games that are going to catch you off guard. Same thing with the Steelers on the road, Washington, Packers on the road. I mean, all these games you're going to pretty much be on your toes, I would say. But that Saints game, for whatever reason, just kind of jumps out to me as the one that has me a little bit like, well, Taysom Hill's there, and they're like, he ain't going to do nothing against us. We got this one. And then they kitch you up sideways. Bodine says, nobody's moving on from Wilson. Between you and me, I can see Carroll getting fired before Russ has moved on. But you're right. Russ would move on if we don't win, brother. His wife is dying to move. It could be the case. And I've heard a lot of talks here around Sierra with it, but with this, it's not based on with me anything with his wife or anything else. It just has to do around the fact of watching this offseason, the way it played out, understanding, again, before Russ said any of the stuff this offseason, before you guys go back and watch, it's 5-hour stream, so I can't expect you guys to watch it, but if you go back and watch my stream in the NFL draft 2019 or whatever, the Jordan Brooks draft, it might be, it was 2019, I think, 2020 maybe. But I literally am saying, look, we're not getting him enough. He's not going to be happy enough with what we're getting him here. He's going to feel like we're underselling him on this run-heavy first team that's not stacking enough on the offensive side of the ball for Russell Wilson to be successful. And this has been coming down the track for a long time. And it's a little bit of like what I said to Tom Brady's situation. Tom Brady sold his house in New England the year before he left. It's a matter of these things don't just happen overnight, and they slowly start to go in this direction. And likewise, you can slowly move them off that direction. You can get just as quickly now start to move it in the other direction, but what it requires is an acknowledgement to make it stop. And by making it stop is to not repeat history that we've recently run through. Ethan, hello. A bit of a shallow week this week for our Hawks. I missed the first bit of the stream. What are we thinking? Josh Gordon putting himself out there again. Not sure if I want to deal with that. I'm willing to deal with it because it's when that's kind of what we've been talking about, Ethan. I think we got to kind of back and forth on some. Want don't want it, but I'm on board with it. I don't think it's going to cost a lot. It's going to be a 1 year, $1 million deal. None of it's going to be guaranteed. If something happens with him, you can cut him at any point in time. So I think that I think they'd be the number one candidate to pick him up at this point, and I'm enthused by it. It's good on a team that I think needs a little more talent here. That's a good thing. Rainy Taco says, consider our tight end group and our receiving group core is much deeper. Another solid set of hands never hurts, but between our running back and tight end groups, it's going to be a hot offense. Well, I hope you're right on that, Rainy Tacos. I do. I've got some trepidation. You don't know what you got in Colby Parkinson. Disley does have an injury history, and I loved Everett, and I think Everett adds a lot. But when it comes to the wide receiver crew, to me, it looks very similar to kind of what you had last year in the totality of it. You know, you've flopped out David Moore for Eskridge, and Eskridge might eventually be a better player than David Moore 2-3 years down the line, but next year at his best is probably an equivalent to what you get in production from David Moore last year, and that wasn't enough last season. So the tight end group then really has to bring it at that point, and as good as Everett may do, he could go out there and flop out the same stats that Hollister did, or put another 150 yards up past what Hollister, another 10 catches past what Hollister put up, because Hollister did 30 catches, 400 yards. Okay, so Everett goes out and puts up 50 catches and 650, 700 yards. Is that enough on its own at that point to push us then back over the top of where we hit last year, where we were a one-and-done team? We didn't even get close to the conference championship. I struggle with that, to have that confidence there, Raining. I do, but I could be wrong on that part, Raining. I'll give you that part I can be wrong on. You might be right there. Emmanuel Mendehain, thank you for your patronage, and it's good to see you. It said, finally made a stream. It's good to hear. I was hoping a little bit of an early time might help some folks out get in here who don't normally able to catch it or have to catch it only in replay. Been rewatching them afterwards because of the time change. I live in Indiana. Well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Got my wisdom teeth pulled earlier today, and it's surprisingly, I'm feeling all right. Go Hawks. I did okay with mine too, Emmanuel. It's not that bad. I mean, it's not a comfortable feeling, you know. And I don't know if you got the little bags they put in the empty hole spaces. It just feels weird as much as anything. But they do pretty good about making it a family painless process and getting those wisdom teeth out. But appreciate you being in here. It's good to see you on in. I got a bunch of folks not able to normally make it, I think, getting in at this time. So I got to do more of these different time streams to kind of balance out for folks. Ethan says, with how quick the Seahawks were to cut Terry, maybe we can have a little bit more hope regarding the Aldon Smith situation. Yes, this is a different situation from the Aldon Smith situation entirely. The murder aspect of the charge here is one that just makes you have to, whether there's, you know, you don't have time to, you don't get to go look at the evidence and parse through it and decide whether or not the evidence, they've been indicted. You got to cut him at that point. You see this a little bit with Dodgers in baseball. They can't cut a guy like Trevor Bauer, who's just got some horrible allegations thrown at him. And so what they're having to do is just instantly take him out and put him out. You're inactive. You're off. You know, and baseball's got a more stronger union, so you can't just it's people away. But that's what happens to happen when it gets to this level of charge. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's probably the right thing to do. So it's not like Aldon Smith, which is more of a battery charge. It's not a felony. You can afford to let that situation play out a little bit more and have a little more patience with it. And we'll get some resolution, I think, on that one within the next month, hopefully before training camp. Randall, hey, good to see you, Randall. How you doing, brother? Daniel W. says the Terry situation seems like a desperate attempt by the prosecution, aka weak case. 3 years later, 11 indicted. They're praying someone knows something and tells what they are knowing before closing, but weak. Agreed, man. It feels like that. And again, recently, some of the stories coming out of police out of Florida, I know Florida's already got the Florida man meme, and it's known for being a little bit buck wild down there, but there's just some weird things with this as far as the playing to the headlines. I thought the Dunbar thing last year kind of reeked of this a little bit, where it seemed like they indicted like right before training camp to get like maximum. I don't know what they're doing. Why does it matter whether you as a police organization get, I don't know, but it does seem a little bit of like a desperate attempt when you're indicting 11 people, like you're just trying to get people to talk. And that maybe they should provide us maybe a little bit of hope here that the thing just kind of gets washed out at the end of the day and he can be back out there on the market and Seattle can potentially pick him up. Bodine, I guess I'm only looking at Weddington and Cade Johnson to maybe coming out as our next Baldwin. Well, those would be your two candidates, and Cade certainly would be the closest of the two, as I think Weddington's going to be more of a gunner type than Cade is going to be, a gunner specialist type, whereas Cade could potentially be your starting slot when the season comes. If him and Eskridge compete, he might beat Eskridge out in certain elements of his route running and just his understanding of zone and sitting down in open spaces in zone, some of the things that are less to do about explosiveness and athleticism and agility, and more just about, feel for the game. But I still do like Cade. I still got some high hopes for Cade. Claire says, Super Bowl, I don't think we have a pretty heavy schedule. Can you do a video on teams we're playing, Colts, Steelers, Saints? I will. I'm also going to do, Claire, a stream this year, always before the games on like Tuesdays, where we'll be going into some of the opponents prior to the season starting on some of those. But that's a great idea too. Maybe getting out a little bit ahead of time on a couple of them. So I'll see if I can put them together, but I promise we'll do some kind of video breakdown for these teams as we come up before the games. Absolutely, for sure. Raining Taco says, to be fair, if any team loses its number one wide receiver, they're pretty effed. I imagine if that was to happen, we'd see a move to fill the hole. Maybe not, but while I agree we're thin, it's not sky is falling thin. It's not sky is falling thin. But again, too, it's not just the wide receiver position I'm pointing at. It's a position of looking across the board, all the positional groupings, and seeing that there's really only a couple position groupings that I feel like are stacked up enough that they can accommodate some injuries. I guess most teams losing their number one receiver to a degree would be effed. I would argue that if you're a team that is going to build to what the Rams offensive scheme has been recently, which I would ask you, Raining Tacos, has the Rams offensive scheme been built towards one wide receiver, or is it built towards having a large amount of talent on the outside to throw to, being able to work the ball around to a variety of guys? I think it's been more that, as well as when you have a balanced attack that's not as reliant on being pass heavy, you can better build within, insulate yourself within having to be, we lost our number wide receiver, our whole offense has to go to crap now. So I think that there are times that that's the case, but I don't think it's always true, and it's not true if you look at it, I think, with where this team's necessarily at. And you can get, I think you're in a position right now where you can get a little bit out ahead of that if you do stack the depth. That is the countermeasure to losing the top end talent, is that you then have the depth to at least accommodate around it. Won't get back to where you were maybe out with the number one guy, but you can get to a reasonable place that was near to where you were. I think I missed a thing on that, Clara, with you on this thing. Tommy Eden, could we maybe steal Devontae Adams if Rodgers holds out, retires, or is otherwise not a Packer next year? What an interesting question. No, I don't think you'd be able to get Devontae Adams, because I think his cap hit this year on a base salary would still be too high for you to find a way to probably squeeze it in. You might be able to just, if you make a move here, make a move there, twist this, pull this handle down, you could probably maybe get it just inside. But my feeling on that would be probably no, because some other team might be willing to offer more than you'd be willing to offer and then put him on a new contract. And if it's that, then because that's the thing, is you're trading for him. You're talking about giving up the first round pick or first round pick plus, then you're going to want to then put him on a new deal with him having free agency impending this next season. You're certainly not going to want to franchise tag him at the receiver franchise tag mark, which is like $16, $17 million per season. So it's probably not that. I would guess too that the Packers would, because they're being so truculent about the situation here with Aaron Rodgers, it would lead me to believe that they think they have a lot of confidence in their roster as it's built right now, a lot of confidence in Jordan Love, and that they're going to try to prove that they were right in this situation this upcoming season, then by that. I don't think that they would just do a fire sale at that point if Aaron happened to move on, because they've been prepping for this transition to take place. If anything, they're surprised that he's continued to play on as well as he has played on, and they've got a fairly built-out roster that could accommodate a rookie quarterback to come in there, and maybe they think they would be able to get it done. I don't think they would, but they would probably talk. They're a lot like Philadelphia is doing the same kind of two-step talking themselves into being contender when they're nowhere kind of near. And I don't think the Packers are anywhere near if they don't have Aaron Rodgers. Brad McDaniel says maybe it's a La'el Collins deal. It's good reference, Randall. La'el Collins was a guy that was going to be a first-round pick in the draft a couple years ago. And Connor Wilson, thank you for subscribing. Lyle Collins was a guy that was supposed to be a first-round pick in the draft a couple of years ago, and then literally right before the draft, these police love their timing, man. Just like right before the draft, like a day or two, I think, before the draft, the police announced that he was a suspect within the case. And this caused him to basically, I think, fall all the way out of the draft to the 7th round, where the Cowboys scooped him up and basically got themselves a cheap Pro Bowl talent at that time because of that. So this could be a situation with Tammarion Terry where it's just police kind of blowing smoke out there and there's not a lot to it. We'll see if that is the case. I think there's a reason to believe a little bit here that it's that there's not some straightforward case of, oh yeah, he definitely was out there shooting like 3 years ago. You've already got a guy that you've determined is guilty in the matter. Now you're going after 11 other people. It does sound a little bit suspect. That is for sure. Rainy Taco says Florida is the chode of America. The law enforcement is legit bad guys club. You're saying in a way that I was trying to tap dance around Raining Tacos, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. Yeah, that's the feeling I get. I get a real dirty feeling sometimes about some of the law enforcement way that things go down there in Florida. It's just a little wonky. Rainey says Georgia would be the stuff hanging from the chode of America. Same police issues. I believe it, man. I've seen some interesting Georgia police videos as well. I don't know why. I don't know the thing I don't get with the Randy is I don't get the politics aspect. We got to make this all this media driven thing. Like, what does it matter if your budget's not determined by how many clicks and views your YouTube channel's getting? Always seemed weird. Daniel W says, thank you for recognizing how strange the prosecution is. They do shady stuff. Seems like a grudge on me. Oh, we're going to find everything out about this case. Fine. We'll ruin your NFL career. It does feel a little bit like that. Yeah. And again, I remember last year with Dunbar and the situation happened with the whole whatever, and then it waited for a while. And then they ended up, it was in deliberation. And then it was like right before training camp, they came down. They're like, okay, Dunbar's going to be charged. He's going to be charged. And then it was like a couple days. Then it was released after that. I think charges were then dropped relatively soon after that. It's just weird. They're just weird down there, man. And I don't like, they got to understand this it looks super weird. Maybe they just don't care. I get the impression Florida has no shits to give. Pushkar. Hello, Pushkar. Do you think we have a better offensive line this year? Yes. Yeah, we are a better offensive line this year. You specifically are, essentially you're flipping out Damian Lewis for Mike Iupati. I'm not sure Damian Lewis is going to be able to pass protect any better than Iupati is, but I'm going to give him maybe a little bit better marks in pass protection and a lot better marks at this point in time in his career. Mike Iupati wasn't bad in run blocking at the end, but this guy's so good in run blocking that he's going to be an upgrade there. And then the right guard side, Gabe Jackson is going to be a way better pass protector than Damian Lewis was. And he'll probably be maybe just a little bit of a hair behind where he was as a run blocker, but at least to be probably about league average in the run blocking game to maybe a smidge underneath, which would make them cumulatively a little bit better because you're keeping everything else across the board where it's at. And so they didn't do a lot of moves to upgrade the line past that push car. It's basically a one move type deal, but your question was, did they make enough moves? Yeah, technically speaking, that is an improvement. Plagueis, of course. Thomas, how you doing, Plagueis? Why are there so many murderers in the NFL? I don't know. I think there's a lot of players that come from troubled backgrounds, and those troubled backgrounds are tough ones, and that they make you grow up real fast, and they put you in dangerous situations, and they put you in situations that you don't always get to have the wisdom of older age to look on and make the right choice in. You make sometimes stupid decisions in that, and it catches a lot of them from that standpoint of it. But I think that a lot of, you look at the NFL and it's a lot of players. I think the NFL is made up of a lot of players that grew up with low income. And I'll also say this. I don't think that there's more murderers in the NFL than anywhere else in life. There's murderers in life and then there's murderers in the NFL. I think if you look at the percentages, the NFL probably has lower percentages of murder. Maybe not lower, but probably an equivalent to what you get in society. And that's me pulling a statistic completely out of my butt, by the way. I have nothing to back that up. Thomas Cox, thank you, my member. How you doing, Thomas? Shout out to you. Appreciate you and your membership. By the way, Thomas, I don't know if you know, you can see my, if you go under your, as a member, if you go under the posting for the community channel there, I'm doing my articles underneath there. So I don't know if you've had a chance to check those out, Thomas, but I'm doing those for the members and stuff. Thomas says, I would rather have a Golden Tate or another veteran receiver over Josh Gordon. Seattle just can't count on him. My question to you, Thomas, would say, why one when you can get two? What's Golden Tate going to cost at this point? Golden Tate's going to run, what's he going to be, about a 1 year, $3 million deal, maybe what he gets, maybe less. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of guys banging down his door. And what's Gordon going to cost? A 1 year, $1 million deal at the most. So 2 players for $4 million, Golden Tate and Josh Gordon. Would you do that, Thomas? I think you would. That won't cost a lot at this point. And both would improve the receiving core quite a bit. Tommy Eden, wait. Now, I do remember a Magnum mustache at one point here, Brandon. Oh, the Magnum PI mustache is coming. It's coming maybe prior to the year, maybe the game. Tim Boyer, thank you for subscribing, Tim. I appreciate you, and you are awesome. The Magnum PI mustache is coming. I just got to commit to it. It'll probably be end of summer. Mark Thurston, thank you for subscribing. We got a little subscribing train going here. But I am going to be bringing out the Magnum PI mustache. You are going to get a Hawaiian shirt. I'm going to get, instead of Detroit Lions, it's going to be the old school Mariner hat. It's coming. Make no mistake. I just got to get the whole outfit put together here. So I got to get the whole thing. It's a whole thing, it's a whole deal. Sorry, I'm behind on the chat here, folks, but we will catch up a bit. Michael YT, is it fair to say that Gordon is a little bit better than Eskridge considering how much talent he has? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Josh Gordon is a more talented player than Eskridge. Eskridge is maybe faster at this point, but when you take into account ball skills, route running, hands, natural feel for the position, yes. The thing we can't forget about Eskridge is he was removed from receiver to cornerback, then back to receiver. And you got to ask yourself, why would coaches at South Dakota State, if they're so high on a receiver and they think so much of him, move him to the other side of the ball to a corner position he's never played? And there's multiple reasons to go into it. But part of the reason to go into it is a little bit of the not necessarily loving as much of the natural fit you get at receiver with him at times, and some of the things you want to see a receiver to do. His route running against off coverage, for instance, is really rough. Like setting up that route, he's got the corner 5, 6, 7 yards off coverage. He gets off the snap, and it's like he's kind of a guy who almost needs the press coverage there to get his feel for it and to get into his route the right way and to get his separation. So there's things he brings to the game that are pluses. There's things he does really well. There's reason to believe he'll give you production that's good out the gate. But Gordon is a more talented player at this point. Tommy Eden says, wait, I do remember a Magnum mustache at one point here, Brandon. Yes, I did promise a Magnum PI mustache. I've been I've been slow selling a little bit on the Magnum PI. Okay, I did promise a Magnum PI, and I did not deliver a Magnum PI mustache. So we are going to get one en route. I will do a Magnum this year, I promise. Within the next 5 months, we will do a Magnum PI mustache. Bodine Lynchfield. I lived in Broward County, Florida. The saying here is, come here on vacation, leave on probation. Never been to a county that has an 80% conviction rate. Florida justice system is questionable. Well, thanks for you do go, Broward County in particular is the one that comes to mind for me, Bodine. That's the one that's like the meme that's just, like every movie they put into a shady place in the country of a police, and they can call them Broward County, and they'd instantly not even have to tell any of the audience any exposition or backstory. They'd be like, oh yeah, they're dirty. Yeah, okay, sure. Mm-hmm. Which is weird how Florida's become that and known for that a little bit. But hey, at least it lets us know, Bodine, we're kind of landing near the mark here. And again, more of the mark of saying too, despite maybe your 80% conviction rate, is maybe if it gets to trial, and that maybe this thing won't get to trial, and they're not expecting it to. They're just trying to get themselves, their name out in public and shake a few folks down. Plaga says it's not a Seahawks offseason without some criminal activity. And unfortunately, that's been the case recently. It's been a little bit of the case recently. Rhino, as a Cowboys fan, I got money and you guys winning the division. Rhino, that's money in the bank, baby. You put that down payment on that car. You go get that outdoor pool installed, okay? Because you are going to be getting paid cash money. And I broke it down a second ago as to why I think. And you go through these teams, and I've looked at all the teams in our division. I study what they do as well. I pay attention to the moves they make. And you not only pay attention to the moves they make, but look at their recent history. And so many of them, Ryan, from a national pundit standpoint, get the benefit of the doubt. And they get the benefit of the doubt for a 1 or 2 moves made this offseason. When you look at all of them and you look at the reasoning on it, that really is what it comes down to. Whereas with Seattle, it's a half a dozen to 10 moves you look at in totality. And go, yeah, but we put all this together over here. You just did that thing. We did all of this. You did that. It's kind of odd. It's kind of odd. But we're the front runners to me. To me, this is a 13-win team as we stand right now, in my opinion. Flag Savage says, was hoping Terry was going to be a killer pickup. Me too, Flag. Me too, man. I had high hopes, but maybe those high hopes don't have to be completely washed at this point. Maybe there is still a little bit of hope that this thing can come around the other way. Brando says, you should turn on the Madden simulation in the back. You guys want to see some Madden simulation? Okay. I'll flip it on here in a second. Let me catch up a little bit on the chat here, and then I'll turn it around and we can turn it on here. Get a couple going. Thomas Cox, like I said, depends on who is hot and who is less injured. There isn't as many contenders like previous years. That's true. I mean, in the NFC, there is not as many contenders. In the AFC, there is. You get to the Super Bowl, you're going to be playing a legit team. You're not going to get to the Super Bowl and just walking through some wild card team that was just lucky to get hot at the end of the point. You're going to get into it's going to be one of those pillar teams over the AFC that you're going to be dealing with. Kansas City, Buffalo Bills, maybe Cleveland. I think it is one of those spots. But in the NFC, while we don't have the depth that the AFC has of teams that usually has been there through recent years, there is the top end teams that are scary. And Packers are scary, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers are scary. Now there's not a lot behind them. But we also are talking about trying to get that number 1 seed too, Thomas, and remembering how important that number 1 seed is to the Seattle Seahawks. Three of, I think, the 4 times you've had the number 1 seed in your history, you got to the Super Bowl. It's been, and now especially knowing that we're getting all the fans back in the stadium, it's a nice little feather to be able to put in your cap. And to go on the road and to get back to the Super Bowl on the road, as we've seen over the last 5-6 seasons, is a real tough trek to try to get there through. Sneakwest Easter. What other player would you want Seattle to sign? I'd love to see is right over my shoulder. You can see right there. I'd love to see Richard Sherman signed. That's a 1-year $3 to 1-year $4 million deal, in my opinion. If not, you could maybe even get it to put a voidable year on there and lower down the deal. I'm sure Sherman would be willing to do that, especially if it was to build out the team a little bit more. I'd love to see that done. I wouldn't be opposed to a Stephon Gilmore trade if he was willing to play on the $7 million a year deal and didn't cost too much in draft capital. Fletcher Cox is not going to happen, but Geno Atkins, I meant to say Geno Atkins. Geno Atkins is a person that I would look at. Sneakwest Easter. I think he is a purified 3 technique that we don't really have on the roster right now. I'd love to see him brought in too, because I think he has still maybe a little bit left in the tank, especially if you can bring him in on a rotational level. If you could make him simply a NASCAR package guy, I think that Geno Atkins could still give you something there. I don't have a lot of pickiness, Sneakwest, as far as who the player exactly has to be. Oh, go get this guy. It's more of get as many guys in here to round this out. Go get Josh Gordon. Go get Sherman. Go get Geno Atkins. It doesn't have to be splashy signings, name signing guys. It has to be upping the ante on this team's depth and talent. That's what it's got to be. Right now at defensive tackle, you're Al Woods, Brian Monet, and Apuna Ford, who's never really played 3-tech before the season, who's now going to be playing 3-tech full-time. Sure would be nice to add a 3-tech behind him. Your corner situation right now is DJ Reed and Achillea Witherspoon as your starters. Solid, not spectacular. Richard Sherman makes that room better. That's more of what it is about for me. It's not about an exact person. It's about methodology. It's about philosophy. It's about understanding what your team is and what's held you back and what you want to avoid holding you back into this upcoming season. And that makes me less picky and more just about adding to the overall girth of the team, for lack of a better word. Tommy, I think the shooting was in Georgia, actually. Found this online. 7 people were shot outside of a nightclub in Ashburn, Georgia on June 30th, 2018. That's right. There were others hit. There was just one person killed, but others were hit. So maybe it was maybe that was all 8 people with their guns out the windows firing. I don't know. We'll have to wait a little bit just to figure out where this really is at. It is weird, though, 3 years later. That's the part that comes back to me again and again. 3 years later? Like, what broke? What new bit of evidence turned over? Flag says, I can't wait for the Niners to flop and that train derails. It set itself up for them to do that this offseason, in my opinion, because they've lost some guys in certain spots, like their corner room is a little bit weaker without Sherman, without Witherspoon. They're relying on a guy like Jason Verrett there, who's not, throughout his whole career, has not been able to play in a 16-game season through like his 5-6 year career, but for last year for the first time. And he is their number one guy that they're relying on. There's a lot here that, their house of cards sits, precipitously placed. And I don't have that confidence in the Niners that the pundits do out there at national. I can understand at least with people telling me that the Rams are going to be good because of Stafford, because it's been a solid team recently. It's been a team that's gone out there and won in the playoffs recently. It's been a team that's played us tough recently. And it's a team that is improving the quarterback position at least. At least there's a little bit of I can kind of get what you're saying. I don't agree with you, but I can get it. I don't understand the Niner hype. The Niner hype just to me is one that's just based on, well, they're in San Francisco, which is a big market and it's a blue blood, and they got Shanahan. He's genius. He's like the smartest guy the NFL has ever seen. So like, yeah, and it's interesting last year, they're the number one most injured team in the NFL last year. They go, 8-8, something like that. They're mediocre as hell. And then the NFL, the pundits and media go, oh my God, you guys were all injured, but you were still so solid as a team. You were still so competitive. Okay, let's go back to 2019. Well, the Seahawks were the most injured team in the NFL in 2019, but we made the playoffs and we won a playoff game. Who should get the benefit of the doubt here, really? Thomas, if you think about it, Seattle's offense and defense didn't play well at the same time, and Seattle was 12-4. Very much the truth. And just to add to your point on that, Thomas, not only did neither of them play well at any given time, both of them playing well, but the other side was always playing almost putrid bad to the other side of the football. So while your defense was great, your offense was really crap in the bed, and while your offense was blowing up scoreboards, your defense couldn't stop anybody to the tune of NFL records. So yeah, if you imagine you getting both of those on the same page for an accumulation of games, that's an unstoppable rebel force. Mark Habercorn, with Josh, we could go 15-2, bring in Sherman. You bring in Josh Gordon, you bring in Richard Sherman, that I could see you getting to 15-2. Sure, I could see it. Devin Martzall says Josh Gordon might be reinstated. Is that true? Would you jump on that train again? I say, why not? Go Hawks. I say, why not as well, Devin? We've covered a little bit here already so far, but it's the three factors that come into play on veterans. This was the thing that I applied to Antonio Brown last year when there were so many Seahawks fans that had so much hesitancy in him bringing him in. And then you went on to see him. Somebody was mentioning here about losing a number one receiver. And last year you saw Mike Evans get beat up a little bit and Godwin out a couple games. And hey, having Antonio Brown there for a couple games was kind of useful for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But it fits to the allotment of three things. It's low cost, it's low risk, get out of it at any time. All upside for a talented guy. It's hard to find those type of deals out there. It's hard to jump on those type of deals. The NFL tends to gravitate towards those depressed assets. So yeah, I'd jump on it, Devin. I'd absolutely jump on it. Thomas, now if they were both playing well at the same time, Seattle had the talent to win the Super Bowl. It's true. It's true to a degree, Thomas. I mean, I don't know if where the defense was a little bit at last year, or even if the offense was playing really well, the defense was getting beat up a little bit. But, I mean, maybe. The thing to understand, too, with it, Thomas, is that you didn't get close to the Super Bowl last year. You didn't even win the first playoff game. So even if you were having both of them going with the same talent you had last year, you might have still topped out at the conference championship level. And in fact, I think you probably would have, understanding where Green Bay and Tampa Bay were last year. I don't know if you were on their level, especially understanding if you were going to have to go play them in the playoffs. Maybe if you played them at home, but even playing at home, Thomas, you were playing those rosters, both of them, they were probably a little more talented than you were in a year where you didn't have fans in the stadium at home in Seattle. But maybe, you might be right on it. Jeffrey Von Wallace, we need to not telegraph our play packages. Have different plays. Well, the first part, so there's two things with that, Jeffrey. Number one, the new offensive coordinator should solve number one there on your list. The number two thing, though, is that actually, because the way number one is going to go about solving things sort of removes number two, being that you say we need different plays. Maybe you're saying need different plays from we were running before. You're right in that respect. I misunderstood what you meant there. So you're right on both things. Where the telegraphing of the plays is going to come on into it is this. This is why I was misunderstanding what you said. The Rams offense is built on running very much, we're going to send the same formation out here. You're going to get 11 personnel 67% of the time. You get 12 personnel 70% of the time. We're not trying to run out 3 wide receiver sets, and then 2 tight end packages, and then running back, fullback, 1 wide receiver set, and then we're going to run out and all this different stuff. It's not trying to do that. It's going to run out set things and then run every kind of wrinkle out of those formations. It means everything's possible on the play. The end around back to an end around, play action pass, just a running, it could be a run to the right, run to the left. The disguising of where the running lane is going to go. No longer are you just hammering the A gap over and over again on inside zone. Now you're going to see them attack. You're going to see them attack essentially horizontally as much as they used to attack vertically from an offensive standpoint. But it's really about the way that everything looks the same pre-snap to defenses, which then doesn't allow you to be as predictable, which makes it harder for them to know where the play is going to go. And that's the element that Waldron's bringing, Jeffrey. That's the element that's going to rectify the things that you're talking about, being removing the telegraphing of what teams are seeing pre-snap. That stuff should be out the book now. And that's part of why, Jeffrey, you hear the players talking about the intricacies of the new offense, the detail-driven aspect of it, because it's about getting those little details right that the defense can't pick up on. It's not about, running a route spectacularly. It's about understanding, hey, no, you need to pay attention to where your hand is on this. Because before you had your hand on this, hand your hand this way, or you had your stance this way, or you move this certain way. It's carrying out a fake in totality. It's understanding that you need to embrace disguising things as in methodology. And again, as I was speaking about earlier, I think very much in Coach Carroll's, in his sort of machismo mode of things and the way he sometimes goes about coaching and going and attacking, especially when he looks at the offensive side of the ball, a little bit defensively as well, is I'm not going to be all new agey offense, defense. I'm not going to be all heavy wrinkles, and I'm not going to be drawing plays up on diagrams all over the place. We're just going to come out here and show you it, and you can't deal with it because we're going to run it so well. It's very hard to do that at the modern age with the reduction of practices. And you could get done with that 10 years ago. You can't do it now. No more two-a-days, no more hitting with pads. It's hard to get that done as much now as you used to be able to get done. Thomas says they lost a tight end. Higbee isn't as good as Everett. That's as well. I forgot about it. Everett's another guy you can add to that list. Ryan O, another guy they lost off. Jeffrey Von Wall says, I hope Penny can stay healthy. Me too. And the fact that they did have him at Media Day a couple days ago was just an encouraging sign to me that he's not going to probably be traded here prior to training camp, that they're going to give this guy one more year ride out and let him see if he can get it done, which is great because he's an excellent fit, Jeffrey, for this offense. The running game is going to attack to the edges a lot more, and that's going to benefit a guy like Penny, that's his game is built towards attacking the edges of the defense, to getting wide, to getting him in space and letting his speed shine. GoHawks 2021, thank you for your membership, sir. And I appreciate you hopping on in the stream. It says, evening, guys. Seahawks will contend, and yes, Super Bowl contenders, if they have no injuries. All I know, that's impossible. Major depth injuries at center, linebacker, running back, quarterback. Zero faith in Penny as a number 2 running back. Flowers, iffy. I pretty much agree with your sentiment at the top. And I do have hope for Penny. I still have a little bit of hope for Flowers. I don't want to necessarily rely on either of those guys. I'm open to relying on Penny a little bit because it's a make or break year for him. And I think last year it takes a year to get over that ACL thing. So I understand last year not being as good, but he's such a good fit for this offensive scheme. If he can get back into his skill set bag. But to your point, it's when you want to go into this season and say, look at our roster, we're fine. You've got to then also acknowledge the fact that when you look at 2019, you were the most injured team in the entire NFL. In 2020, you were the 5th most injured team in the entire NFL. Yes, you were able to be successful around that, but then maybe wouldn't a smart ideological approach to this upcoming year to be then, hey, we're probably going to be top 10 in injuries this year. That's probably going to happen. So why don't in our roster building, we build to that eventuality? Maybe that'd be pretty smart. That's all I'm saying with it on that. I think we agree on that. Nate Hawk, Seahawks are still sweeping the West because Jimmy G is trash, Murray is trash, and Stafford couldn't win with Detroit. I love it, Nate Hawk. I'm with you, man. None of those guys got me scared. I think Seahawks have solved Jimmy G. I don't think there's anything about Jimmy. I think that Mullins kid with the San Francisco 49ers the last few years was more scary for our defense than Jimmy Garoppolo is. He doesn't freak me out. I'm not sold on Kyler Murray, the guy who was talking about still being open to going back to baseball this offseason. And he's got that kind of personality where you can see him just waking up tomorrow and being like, I'm going back to baseball. And then to, Stafford with Detroit, I'm not sure. There's been a lot of people that came in here, Nate, a lot of Rams fans that have come into my chat. They talk about how Stafford's going to be monumental. Like he's going to make them 60, 70% better just by his presence alone because Goff was that bad. Maybe Goff was that bad. I'm a little bit unconvinced myself in that respect, but yeah, maybe. Maybe. One second, folks. Be right back. Sorry about that. Thomas says, I'd be ecstatic if Seattle gets Sherman, Atkins, and a center to compete with Posick. I would be ecstatic with that, and I'd feel a little bit better. I'd be a lot better about this roster, Thomas, if that was the case. Absolutely. Nate Hawk, 5 reasons why we're winning the Super Bowl. Number 5, we're balanced on both sides of the ball. Number 4, manageable schedule. Number 3, the NFC West sucks. Number 2, no competition in the NFC, and 1 AFC powerhouse don't stack up. Those are solid points, Nate. And certainly none of those points are ones that I could necessarily argue and say, no, there's no truth to those. There is truth to all those. And there may be enough truth to those that makes us a Super Bowl winner. I think that Go Hawks 2021 put it kind of succinctly for me in that way, in that you do have a roster right now, if everything stays healthy, if all the breaks break in your way, if you get the 2019 San Francisco 49ers season where nobody gets injured and you get young guys balling out that weren't necessarily great to be in, but now have really upped their ante of play. A guy like Bosa bursts onto the scene from day one, is not just an impactful pass rusher, but one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL. Well, that's that's pretty nice. So if you can get that kind of up, it's just that it's hard to count on that. It's hard to know that that's going to be a certainty. It's more of if the dice fall in the right direction, it'll go right. And it feels like you can have still at this point in time, especially still being out from the season where we are, still having time to kind of get this kind of rounded out in a way that you want to round it out. There's enough time to get that done now. And that's to where you don't have to put as much of your eggs in the basket of risk, of luck, of hope, of counting on the outlier. Those are always things I usually gravitate away from. Ethan Tech World says the 49ers lost solid defensive coordinator. That's right. Niners lost one of the bright young minds we're told in the NFL. I mean, it's been said over and over again. The guy gets more camera time during an NFL game than many coaches. And they lost him. A guy who you got to give Saleh credit to in the respect of the number one thing that jumped out at me with Saleh from an X's and O's standpoint is that when he came in there as defensive coordinator, they were running the Seattle Seahawks defensive scheme. The 4-3 over, single high safety, and they were getting gashed a bit with it. And he was the guy knowing what he had in that front four there, who really leaned into his front four by transitioning to the wide 9 approach, which just essentially, if you take a defensive line and you have a traditional 4-3 defense with your defensive linemen all kind of next to each other, the wide 9 essentially just stretches things out, right? So just moves everybody out of the gap just a little bit wider. And that means the guys have a little bit more width then to get their pass rushing repertoire put on display. And Saleh was a real key to that. But yeah, that's a loss for them. It's a big loss for them to lose him, on top of a couple of the personnel losses they've had this offseason as well. Nate Hawk says Seahawks are going to get Kingsbury fired. This is a make or break year for Kingsbury. If he doesn't get it done this year, year 3 of Kyler Murray, if that offense isn't very explosive, which was the big thing with him coming in there, was he was going to help bring in our new redefined offensive approach here to the spectrum of things. Well, it's going to be what it is there with the guy. I think he's out if he can't get it done. I expect them to be somewhere between third or fourth place this season. So it's probably a likelihood to see it happen. Pushkar says, I feel like the reason the pundits pick Seattle last is because as a business, NFL does not have much room to grow in Seattle. We already have the highest ratio of fans to population. Oh, that's awesome, Pushkar. I love that. I didn't know that, Pushkar, but that's cool to hear. And you may be right. I think that just in general, too, they've always gravitated away from really wanting to give a lot of acclaim for okay. That's time to get the cat on the stream here. They're about to fight, so let's see if we can get him chilled out. Let me see. But that's very true for that reason, maybe as much as what you said. If we've got the highest ratio of fans to population in the NFL, it's true. What does the NFL have to really do in upping Seattle and upping their profile? I think it as well as we're talking about them trying to up the profile at our cost of a team in San Francisco, of a team in Los Angeles. I think that's more in their realm, because they're not hyping up the Cardinals either. It's really 49er Rams, and I know that since the Rams have gone back to LA, it's been a big thing of the NFL to try to push that market, because it's been such a lukewarm, milquetoast, no loyalty having, everybody move from outside in type market as far as supporting their sports teams. If you're not basically the Los Angeles Lakers, you ain't nothing. That's at least the way it feels to me. Bo Dean says Robert Saleh and Matt LaFleur's brother went to the Jets. That's also an L. That's right. Matt LaFleur was offensive coordinator, or the offensive run coordinator for the Niners, I believe, as well. He went. They moved on as well, the Jets. That's a good point. I think they didn't do anything to add on from last year. Rookie quarterback, never won a Super Bowl. Jimmy G, $27 million backup quarterback. Yeah, that's where I land with it. They didn't do a lot of moves this offseason. You lose a couple coaches. You have a couple of personnel losses. I think they added Samson Ekinbon, who's an okay outside linebacker, and their linebacker crew is going to be really good. They do have a good linebacking crew there. Good pass rushers. Their front seven is going to be legitimate. But when you look offensively, I think that they're a little bit limited. And I think, though I like Trey Lance's game, I think it's going to take a couple years to tap into the best of that game. And we already know what Jimmy G is. And so when you're basically running out the fourth best quarterback in the division, to me, that's going to sort of halt your top end a bit. Thomas Cox says, heck, I'd take Tate too. Give Eskridge, Johnson, and Weddington some time to get better. Yeah. Just round out the depth, Don't rely on young guys to be productive. Don't rely on uncertainties to be, super explosive in the stat column and give you that. You've got to, to me, I'd more rely on the veterans, rely on guys that have done it before. Raining Tacos, remember that time Josh Gordon put the banana in the commission's tailpipe? Clearly, it's the real reason behind the beef. It'll all come out in the behind the music. Classic Flash, Raining Tacos, totally. I do remember that time. And then, of course, there was the other time when he went into his bathroom and he had the cherry bomb and he dropped it in Goodell's toilet. And, he had dropped a deuce before he dropped the cherry bomb in. That's the other thing. So you guys can just imagine what the room looked like. Ethan Tech World, losing Robert Saleh is a big loss for the 49ers. It's not like they are really actually using head coaches, defensive schemes like Seattle with Carroll. Again, something 49er fans don't talk about. Yeah. So I think they're both sides of the ball. You lost coaches, and the Rams, I counted somewhere between 7 and 9 coaches they lost this season at very key spots. Your defensive coordinator, your passing game coordinator, your running game coordinator, like all the little parts and pieces, which if you lose one in themselves, maybe not a big deal, but you lose those, and then you don't have a great offseason from a personnel standpoint. To me, a lot of what San Francisco did this offseason was more about the future and getting themselves turned around towards that future than it was exactly for the now. That's how it sort of felt. Go Hawks 2021. Sorry, I disagree. How do you feel about someone that only thinks of themselves all the time? Very unreliable, personally. I would have nothing to do with them. So why would you want Josh Gordon? No, number one, I don't have I don't have every last bit of data of information over the last 4 years as to what Josh Gordon's done or what he hasn't done or how many tests he's failed or how many total tests he's taken and what's been failed. What I do know is this. I know that the last time that he failed a test reportedly was with New England or just before New England Patriots when they signed him, whatever. And then it was done where he had a relapse after his brother died. I am going to give a guy a little bit of rope for that. Now, from that standpoint of that moment, which was almost, 2 years ago, he's been kept on suspension. And that reportedly last year it was not a failed test, but some sort of administrative thing that didn't go through. Or he didn't hit some mandatory test spot, which put him back on the commissioner's exemption list. It's very much understood that once you get into the drug program of the NFL, it is not a program that makes it anywhere near easy for the player to get out of the program. You're almost stuck or meant to fail within it, much like you could say a lot of the way our prison system could sometimes institutionalize guys. This is not to give Josh Gordon a pass, but this is to say, once again, I understand and acknowledge that I got to grow up from a point of view of pretty nice general childhood. Didn't have a lot of toughness around me in that respect, not compared to some other people in this country. And we were talking about before, why does the NFL have so many, sorry, cats are going at it here for some reason. Why does the NFL have so many criminal problems or so many this or so many that? Well, because they come from lower income backgrounds. And lower income backgrounds tend to have a little bit more problems with the law, tend to have a little bit more problems with drugs. So I'm going to have a little bit more patience for those folks. And when I understand last year's thing was not about a failed test, but some administrative function. What if he had showed up for Go Hawks 2021 for the last 12 months? They had done 37 mandatory tests and somehow he didn't get the text on the 38th test. What if we come to find out, would you have any more patience with that? I would. And again, this is the final part on this. I'll say with this Go Hawks 21 is there's the 3 items that come down to this. The same thing with Antonio Brown. It's not Antonio Brown's at the top of my list or Josh Gordon's at the top of my list. It's that my list right now is get this team better by any means necessary. And if that's a player that's going to upgrade and improve this roster, then so be it. But it's the 3 items. It's the 3 items that you want to take into account on a troubled player. And if you apply my formula to it, you'll never go wrong. You'll always be up. The formula works like this. Low cost. No risk. Cut at any time. All upside. That's the methodology you basically apply. And it sounds simplistic, but I think that's something sometimes people forget about this stuff. You sign Josh Gordon for what? Is it going to be a 1-year, $5 million deal, a 1-year, 10? No. It's a 1-year veteran minimum, bare minimum, no guaranteed money, $1 million deal. 1 year, $1 million deal. And this is if he's reinstated, Go Hawks 2021. If he's not reinstated, I'm not signing him. But if he's reinstated, I'll sign him on that. Because it's a 1-year, $1 million deal with no guaranteed money. No multi-years. I can cut him at any time. If he, in week 4, gets popped, bye-bye. I'm then only on the hook at that point for a salary of $250,000. For a $250,000 risk, if that's the worst case scenario, the way this could play out, is that worth it for me? Shoot, if I got 5 great games of production for him out of that for $250,000, that's money well spent. So if we're talking about taking on a player with multiple years, if we're talking about taking on a player with bonus money that's going to make it hard for me to cut him, if we're talking about taking on a player who's going to cost me draft capital, who's got a troubled past, I'm right there with you. I'm not taking the risk. But when you're talking about veteran minimum, no draft capital given up, no risk to cut him at any point in time, no guaranteed money, no multi-year deal, I start to ask the question, why wouldn't you take that flyer? Josh Gordon isn't better than Freddie Swain. Josh Gordon isn't better probably than Dwayne Eskridge. No, he's better than Cade Johnson. So that's kind of why I'm there on it. I understand, though, also Go Hawks, why there are people that are done with it, and it's been enough times with them in dealing with Josh that they're just kind of over it. I get that, too. Flag Sabbath, thank you for mentioning that. Please slam on that like button if you happen to like what you are hearing. Dev Peterson, have you seen my Hawks channel? I thought I commented on one of your videos with it, Dev. Okay, so Dev, put it in after the video post today. Put in the comment section your video channel again, and I'll bounce over there. I think you posted it I might get it in the chat, not in the, I think I saw it, and I thought I'd saw it, but put it in the comment section here after the video post today, and I'll go check it out. Rainy Taco says, it's not kumbaya, but it's still a tired subject. I understand, but it's the thing that I want to do on this channel is talk about the pertinent news that has to deal with the Seattle Seahawks. And losing a Hall of Fame franchise quarterback and being on the edge of that, being on the knife's edge of that, raining, is something that, whether it's been talked about enough or not, which I would argue with you, Rainy Talkers, being that I was talking about it a year before anybody even sniffed the subject. Yeah, being that that's the not almost by that right alone gives me a right to continue to talk about it, because I'm kind of out ahead on the subject a little bit. I'm kind of out ahead of it. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but hey, I got it right on it, way out ahead of everybody else. And I think I'll be way right on this as well. That's why I'm hammering it as much as I am. Deb Peterson, go check out my Seahawks gaming channel, The Hawkhead. I will for sure, man. Thomas, I'm sorry I grew up watching Ken Griffey Jr. and A-Rod leaving. I think Russ will leave Seattle within 2 seasons. There's a lot of anger against each other. There is. I feel there is animosity there that is in the air between those two sides. I think it's not just Russell Wilson. I think it's the front office as well. And I think this offseason has been a little bit, even though that they've been able to come back together in a ceasefire situation, there was a little bit of scorched earth approach to what Russell Wilson did. When players tend to release lists of teams they're willing to be traded for, if you look at recent history, those players tend to get moved. Whether they get moved to those teams exactly they're on the list or not, they tend to be moved. They don't tend to remain around. And there are mechanisms here that could give us confidence. The bonus money, the base money of Russell Wilson being converted to bonus would give you that confidence. A restructured deal would give you that confidence. Something that goes beyond just the words being told to us, which if you listen to the words being told to us, like Coach Carroll saying it's a media invention. No, it's not. The media didn't invent the 4 teams Russell Wilson released that he wanted to be traded to. The media didn't invent Russell Wilson saying I'm being hit too much. The media didn't invent Russell Wilson wanting to have say over the new offensive coordinator and personnel decisions. The media didn't invent a day after Coach Carroll says we need to be more explosive in the run game, Russell Wilson coming back and saying we should need to score 24 points in the first half. Rain Talker says the missing piece of your argument is that you're not in the room. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying the subject is super boring and no one is bringing any new information to the table. I don't understand on that. The subject is boring. You losing your franchise quarterback and what that carries with it is a boring subject. I don't know what to say to you, man. And I try to cover all the subjects on this channel. I don't think that we've just harped on this. I've done a live stream now for 1 hour and 48 minutes. I think I've probably talked about Russell Wilson raining tacos about 10 to 15 minutes. But again, I've given you the reason why I'm going to continue to discuss it and talk about it. Again, maybe I'm not in the room, but I was also the guy predicting this back a year ago. How did I know that? Because you can see a situation coming down if you pay attention to the signs. And the thing that I see a lot in Seahawkland fandom, and why I bring this up again and again, is I see a lot of fans wanting the situation to be resolved, wanting it to just go away. And then that's going to be potentially at the cost of it coming back and rearing its head next year. Whereas if we pay attention to it now, if we make more of a, hey, this can't be the way that this goes. Let's hold this together. Let's try to make this happen. But again, I get where you don't want to hear. I'm not going to change, though. You'll understand, Raining Tacos. I'm not going to change if you're the only person in the chat telling me that you don't want to talk about it. So appreciate where you're coming from, but I am going to continue to touch on it. Seahawks Network. I will not tolerate Josh Gordon slander. I love it, Seahawks Network. Jeffrey, Russ won't leave. He's too worried about his legacy. Yeah, see, this, again, Rain Tacos, you talk about it's boom, there's nothing to add. This is why there's stuff to add. There's folks that don't understand where this is at. Russ will leave, Jeffrey. Russ will leave. Russ will leave. You talk about his legacy, and on that, we agree. Russell Wilson is more keenly aware and is more keenly wanting his legacy to be put at the forefront. And he looks at right now being a guy at 32, 33 years old with 1 Super Bowl win and 2 Super Bowl appearances and the reputation that he got those Super Bowl appearances on the back of a great defense. Well, that's not great for your legacy. And when you look at the last 5 to 6 years, Jeffrey, where you've topped out as a one-and-done team in the playoffs, you know, you barely get in the playoffs, or you get to the playoffs and then you win one game, then you lose, or you just lose in the first round, but you don't get anywhere near the conference championship and you don't even get within miles of the Super Bowl. Well, for a guy who literally named his child Win, how does that sit with his legacy? How does he feel about that with his legacy? And then if you go through another year where you're at 11-5 and one and done, where does he see that put his legacy if he can go out and do what Tom Brady did this offseason and probably cannot replicate what Tom Brady did this offseason going to a new team, but that doesn't mean, Jeffrey, that Russell Wilson doesn't think he can replicate what Tom Brady did this offseason with going to Tampa Bay. So it's absolutely here on the table, Jeffrey. It is. It's unfortunate. I hope it goes away. There's a way for it to go away, but it is on the table. Raining Tacos, here's the thing I don't understand with it. You say it's a clickbait topic with no new points being brought up, but it isn't a clickbait topic. It's you're the most important player in your organization could be moving on within a year. You would be in line to talk about that daily. The most maybe important player that you've had in your entire franchise history moving on within a year. You don't just talk about that over the day or two. And the reason that it's most impactful here is it's about right now adding new players. And the $10 million you could create by taking his base money to bonus money, the bonus money you could create is those many more players you could go out there and get. And in not creating that base to bonus money, it does tell us some things new and interesting. But again, you don't have to listen to it if you don't want, man. But it's a topic I am going to talk about on this channel. It's my channel. I talk about what I want to talk about. That's why I created this channel. I think it's a very important subject. And I think that there are new things. It doesn't, whether it's new or not, we can talk about this isn't about a channel about news. This is a channel about turning over what is a philosophy, what the methodology, what the approach that we're taking. Is this right or wrong? Is there a better one to take? I'm not just here just trying to give headlines. That's not what I do here. There's about 5 or 6 other channels that do that. Rainy Tacos, you're free to head out anytime, man. You're free to go anytime you want, buddy. Truth as I know it says, yes, this roster is potentially Super Bowl winning roster. And truth as I know it, do you think it's a Super Bowl roster right now? If there are no injuries, it's a Super Bowl roster, or even to be able to build up against some injuries, it could still sustain and be a Super Bowl roster. Thomas Cox says, Brandon Marshall was saying Russ was trying to find a classy way to leave. His legacy is way too important. Oh, sorry, Thomas. I missed your top comment on that. And I'm trying to be realistic. Russ wants to be Brady unless Seattle wins the Super Bowl or gets close, but he will be leaving. That's how I see it right now. It's pretty much, I think, conference championship, I think, is the bare minimum. And I don't know that would placate him. But this is why I want to be aggressive with it. Bodie in Lynchfield says, you're freaking right. I just realized that Wilson has never gotten a first-round weapon in the first round. Yeah, they've certainly done certain things to help him out at skill positions and spent some second rounders to get them there. They have done some first rounders, Bodie, and we've got to acknowledge you did trade a first rounder for Percy Harvin to get him a playmaker out on that outside, and Jimmy Graham was a first round pick. I mean, those guys were given for a first rounder, no doubt, but in Jimmy Graham's case, you were giving up his center to do so. So it was a little bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul. But I think this is a little bit of what's driving also the Aaron Rodgers discontent in Green Bay, where he feels, whether it's right or wrong and whether it's valid or invalid, that the team has not done as much as they could have to build around him, to give him those playmakers they could. And instead, they got cute with their roster building a little bit. Packers' case, going out and getting a quarterback in the first round, and then going and getting a running back in the second round, and not, when they seem to kind of somewhat desperately need some more receivers there. But they've certainly not, they've done a lot, especially with the offensive line, in my opinion, Bodine, relying on Russell Wilson to be able to scramble around trouble, getting out of offensive linemen that aren't good pass protectors. They're run blockers first and foremost and pass protectors second most, and that they've relied upon him to be able to just get them out of trouble and be a sort of a miracle man at times. And that's not going to work anymore now, as Wilson has gotten a little bit older and not quite as elusive as he once was. Seahawks Network says, why would he want to stay if he weren't winning? Solid point. All the more reason we got to win this year. Seahawks Network, we've put plenty of resources into the offense in the first round. They just didn't pan out. Yep. And trades, the 2 trades I just mentioned as well, as I'd say not great in how they panned out. Jeffrey Von Wallace, we are winning, just not the Super Bowl. We are. So, Jeffrey, the key comes down to, is it, from Russell's standpoint, is it enough to be just a consistent winner for his legacy, or does he want to win Super Bowls? Which of those do you think he wants, if you had to guess? Seahawks Network, Russ doesn't want to flame out in the playoffs. He wants to win a Super Bowl. Seahawks Network just answered for me. Greg George. How you doing, Greg? Happy Blue Friday. Happy Blue Friday to you, Greg. Appreciate it. Glad to see you're still alive through the heat wave. I barely made it, my man. I about passed out a heat stroke out on the basketball court because I tried to go out there and shoot the other day in 110-degree heat, which is not a good idea. What will be our record in the first 4 games? 1-3, I hope. Let's go. 1-3, I hope. You hope 1-3? I think you meant 3-1. I'm going to go with 3-1, Greg. There's at least one loss there. The Tennessee game gets a lot more scarier with Julio Jones's addition. You've got him and A.J. Brown on the outside and then that run game. And you've got no real way you can lean in that game to take anything away at that point. The play action is going to give our defense a little bit of trouble, especially the traditional play action, not read option, but the under center stuff they do with Tannehill. And then, getting your linebackers to kind of bite in. You take a guy like Jordan Brooks off of his tape, that's something that he will do, where he wants to lean into the running game, and then you can beat him off of the play action. That's part of what sometimes gives him troubles in zone coverage. But, yeah, I would think 3-1 is where I'm going to go with. I think you go 3-1. You got the fans back in the stadium. You pull one of those out. Seems like we got kind of the Vikings number a bit. But, yeah, I'll go 3-1. Nathaniel Park says a trap game for me is the Bears. Top level D over there, and Fields will probably be starting by that point. Excuse me. 2. Yeah, I was thinking of calling that one out, Nathaniel. The fact that it was at home gave me a little bit more, but you also could be at that point in the year where you're kind of saving some guys, and you've maybe got a couple wins, and you're trying to already have an eye toward the playoffs and getting guys right and healthy at that point if you're in that good position. But that could easily be a game that gives us troubles. A mobile young quarterback with a big arm and a tough defense. I mean, that alone can, as we've seen with a guy like Kyler Murray recently, the quarterback doesn't need to be super refined at that point to beat your defense. Najee says, Terry caught a body. Why'd they call it a felony murder? Well, murder is always going to be a felony, no matter what. So, but yeah, it's essentially a lot of guys got shot in addition to one person getting killed. So I guess in my mind, what I'm picturing is a couple of cars. I guess you wouldn't have all 8 people aiming a gun out of one single car. That'd be pretty nuts. The whole thing's nuts. But yeah, it does seem like somebody did some shooting. But it's also a little bit, as we're talking about here, Najee, it's a little bit weird that this is 3 years after they're bringing this to play. Deb says, I'm excited for our season in Madden 22. I'm hopeful for Madden 22, but I'll tell you, my excitement level is always a little restrained with them. Just a little bit restrained. We'll see. They got the next generation to go off of now. Maybe they actually kind of push the envelope a bit. Rating says, we win more than most teams ever hope to. In fact, I'd say we're spoiled, and I love it. If Russ wants, he can rot in Chicago. We love Russ, but no one has won a Super Bowl with that much money tied up in the quarterback. Agreed. I think it makes it very hard to win a Super Bowl when it's been impossible to win a Super Bowl when you have a quarterback making as much of a percentage of the salary cap as Russell Wilson's making this year. And the last year, you had 2 teams in the Super Bowl who had 2 quarterbacks. And those 2 quarterbacks just happened to also be the only two quarterbacks in the NFL that took one less cent than they absolutely positively could have. The only 2 got to the Super Bowl. Is that a coincidence? Probably not. Also, 2 quarterbacks who took less of that percentage of the cap than Russ was taking last year or than Russ was taking this year. So it's a solid point. And, if he goes out and leaves, he maybe could go rot in Chicago, raining tacos. But the feeling I have on it is that it will be at the detriment of both people, both sides here. It will hurt both the Seattle organization and it will hurt Russ. The best success for both of these two as we go forward is them being together. And that you split that up, that you have something maybe a little special here and you split it up, and don't be surprised if both sides kind of sputter once that split up happens. They're both at their best somewhat together, I think, here a little bit. But again, your secondary point is correct. It's something that I've hit on a lot. Seahawks Network, Florida Jaguars is stealing our players and throwing them in jail. Dunbar, Terry. Yeah, it sucks, man. If I was doing a Seahawks seminar to any Seahawks players, I'd say, stay the hell out of Florida. Don't go to Cabo, go to California, go to Hawaii. Stay out of Florida. Tommy says, I don't think this happened in Florida. Everything I read is Georgia. It was just weird that he's got arrested in Florida, though. I didn't know he got moved or anything. And I thought he was in school at the time at Florida State of the shooting, I'd heard. Nathaniel Park says, I don't know if you saw, but Gordon just did file for reinstatement again today. After last year, he failed to get reinstated. I did. We've talked about it a little bit here, Nathaniel. I think most people are on board. There's a couple that are not wanting to take that risk again with him, but I think most people are on board with bringing him back into play a little bit in the fact that he's a talented guy and it's not a lot of a risk. So I think I did see that. I think we're all pretty, or at least I'm on board with bringing him back. It's 1 year, $1 million deal, Nathaniel, is what it would cost. That's not a big price for me. You can cut him any time if he goes out of bounds. Hawks are the piece. Hawks are the ace. Sorry, Hawks. Hey, Brandon, when do you expect answers on Jamal's contract? I'd expect that Jamal's contract gets done right around the beginning of training camp. It might take even a day or two into training camp if the negotiations are there, but I don't think it goes beyond that. I don't think that he's a long holdout. I think that the deal gets done. At the end of the day, the Seattle Seahawks have the leverage in the situation. Jamal does not. Yes, Jamal could force his way out of town, but Jamal's not going to force his way out of town to go make $20 million that he's reportedly wanting. He'll force his way out of town to make the next highest paid safety on the market money, which is exactly what the Seattle Seahawks are willing to pay right now. So all that being equal, why wouldn't you just remain at that point? So I probably within just before the training camp, 1 to 2 days in. Evan Stylus says, I feel like we can get by with our receivers as constructed. I agree with you about upgrades. I think this scheme isn't one receiver specific. So Freddie Eskridge could be solid. They could. And certainly Freddie was all right for most of the season last year. He's a rookie doing his rookie thing. And, combo those two guys together, they might be enough. It might be enough. I like the thought process of going, let's go beyond just enough. Let's push this envelope a little bit further than that, because the just doing good enough at positional groupings recently really has seemingly found you at times getting decimated by injury and then you not having any answers by backups to go then get the job done, which is what I'm worried a little bit about in upending potentially our season a little bit. Joey Del Rosario. Is there still any chance KJ Wright will be back, or did the Hawks already move on? There's a chance he could come back, probably driven more by injury potential at this situation. If Darrell Taylor has something dodgy happen with his leg, or you get some hurt from a depth standpoint, Cody Barton maybe goes down. Maybe you would then look back onto him at that point. But it does seem like the Seattle Seahawks are looking a little bit more towards trying to get a little bit younger at those positions. And they want to get Jordan Brooks on the field. And they want to get Darrell Taylor out on the field. I think they'd be looking a little bit by bringing KJ Wright in of starting to stack up a lot of highly drafted players that are sitting on your bench. If you were to bring KJ Wright, you could feasibly be starting out the season once you go to a nickel defense with Darrell Taylor, Jordan Brooks, LJ Collier, and Marquise Blair all sitting on the bench at once. It's not great. You got 2 second-round picks, 2 first-round picks in there, all recent, all sitting on your bench. You probably want to try to find a pathway to getting those guys some playing time and getting them out on the football field. So I think that that's driving this more than it is that they're not feeling like KJ can come back and give them some productivity. Probably feel like he could, but they're probably worried about the injury risk that he carries. He has had his share of injuries throughout his career. It's going to cost a little bit of money. It's not going to be getting him on a 1 year, $1 million deal. It's going to cost you $4 million is probably what it's going to carry. So those things all put together, and you throw it all together, and it probably means, don't have to do it. Bodine Lynchfield, all the big moves are always defensive moves. Pete never shows no love to the offense. God forbid we give up 2 first-rounders for Saquon Barkley or Darren Waller, generational offensive linemen. I agree. I posed an interesting question a couple of years ago at the end of the year to the chat regarding Quentin Nelson of the Colts. So this would have been after the Packers game. And I totally probably got behind on the chat here. Sorry about that. After the Packers game, man, I got way behind on the chat. Sorry about that, folks. Would you guys trade 3 first-round picks for Quentin Nelson at the end of that year? And pretty much everybody's out. And it's one thing I've always wondered is, like, would you guys go make those trade values for those guys? Because the Seahawks haven't shown a willingness to move for those guys recently, especially linemen like you spoke about. But it'd be interesting if they did and how that might affect the team if you did that. 3 first-round picks is probably too much for Quentin Nelson, but, man, he'd be the type of player that would make me think about it. Diehard Hawks fan, do you think the Hawks will get back to the press coverage to confuse cornerbacks to give our defensive line more efficiency? I don't think that they're going to necessarily transition back to it more often than they have recently. They will mix it in a little bit diehard. Trey Brown does that really well. DJ Reed's a good press guy. Trey Flowers can do that well when he's on the field. It's a little bit of Achilio Witherspoon's game. He can kind of do both with the off coverage or press looks. But I think more of what's going to help the defensive line, especially the defensive edges, diehard Hawks fan, is that you've actually stacked up defensive line talent there on the edges. A lot of what I'm advocating for Seattle to go do at the wide receiver position or running back position or lineman or, cornerbacks is you've got a position where you could say, we're just good enough. Seattle could have gone in this offseason and said, okay, we got Carlos Dunlap back. We're bringing Benson Mayowa back. We've got our young guys. We could be just good enough here. We could call this a day. We could rely on one of Rasheem Green, LJ Collier, Darrell Taylor to pop, Alton Robinson. That's 4 guys, one of them to pop, and then go along with those guys and fill out the rest of the pass rush through that. But they didn't. They said, no, now we're going to go get Kyrie Hyder. Okay, now we're going to go get Alton Smith. You kept building on this strength already. And because what they probably really did is go back to diehard Hawks fan and look and see that in that too, the Legion of Boom era, that Super Bowl year, the next year you went to the Super Bowl, you had the best pass rushing unit in the entire NFL. Yeah, the back end was great, but your guys on the front end were able to create pressure and create pressure quick. And that's what I expect them to do again this year. And that's part of what's going to then help those guys in the secondary, I think, more than the guys in the secondary helping the defensive linemen. But I don't know if you'll see a lot of that press. If you see Trey Brown on the field a lot, they'll put him up way more impressed, diehard Hawks fan, because that is his game. He's not an off-cover guy. You're going to want to get him up in the receiver's pocket. That's what he does. Reed can do a little bit more of both, but they'll mix it up. Part of what drives that question as much as anything, diehard Hawks fan, is if they're going to really embrace the blitzing model with Jamal Adams, a blitzing model which historically under the Coach Carroll era, he has not embraced. He's not wanting to blitz a whole lot, whereas last year blitzed quite heavily with Jamal, taking advantage of Jamal Adams' skill set. And if they do that, if you're going to blitz more often, that usually will usually put you in more positions to press as well. Hawks of the Ace, who has the better chance to make the roster, Cade or Connor, or both might make it? Cade Johnson has a better chance to make the roster than Connor. Connor's just a special teams guy, but Seattle's going to need the talent, I think, at the wide receiver position, especially with the 17th game on the schedule, which will allow him to probably get in over the top of him. Seahawks Network, if we give up 2 firsts for Saquon, Brandon would lose his mind. I would lose my mind for 2 first-round picks for Saquon Barkley. I can do it for a lineman, but I will not do it for a running back. There's no way in hell. No. No more first-round picks on running backs. That's a no-go land for me. That's a safe word for me. Dev, what is the strangest thing we've done? For me, it's us trading Max for Graham. I didn't mind necessarily trading Max Unger at the time. I think Max Unger wouldn't have enjoyed the same kind of career that he enjoyed in New Orleans if he had remained in Seattle. I think Seattle's zone run-heavy nature kind of makes it a little bit harder on the linemen at times, whereas when you're doing a little more patty caking and pass protection, that can be a little bit more easier on you, and that was more of Unger's game anyway, was in pass protection than it was being just a true Mauler-type blocker at the center position. He was good at getting down to the second level, but just not a man-on-man, like going to drive guys off the ball type dude. The stupidest thing that I think the Seahawks have done. That is a good question. I'm going to go with Malik McDowell. Yeah, the Seattle Seahawks couldn't have, no way they could have forecasted that Malik McDowell was going to drop an ATV on his head. But the thing that you heard about Malik McDowell, and this was heard so openly that even folks like myself just hearing it secondhand, it was widely known that Malik McDowell carried huge character risks, that he gave horrible interviews at the Combine. He had teams take him off their list just by the interviews that he gave at the Combine. And I think Seattle knew it, and they were aware of the risk they were taking going after him, and they still went and did it. And I think they got too wrapped into that talent and did none of the background, too much of that. Well, we can bring him back, right? We can bring the trouble. And that needed to be a situation in that respect of you saying, no, not for a high second round pick. Buda Baker's sitting here. Go get Buda Baker, or go get another guy, not this guy here. So that guy's the one, that's the pick of many of them that stand out to him. It's that one, or it's probably LJ Collier, that one. Because both of those 2 picks are made to me out of desperation and not because you were just so fallen and smitten with the player. Victor Aqua, do you think we signed Gordon? I feel like he wants to be in Seattle since he hasn't gotten to play a lot. Yes, Victor, I do. If you look at his Instagram, he's got tons of posts of him in Seattle. It seems like he's remained here and he continues to live here throughout these last year and a half, 2 years or whatnot. I do think that he's, at the end of the day, if he becomes into an active status, that he'll just sign back with Seattle. He'll appreciate last year you gave him a contract. He didn't even play last year. Essentially, you sort of you put your faith in him and you trusted him, and maybe that little bit of that will be reciprocal back to you now this offseason, or this season, maybe a little bit. But I would expect it, Victor. I would. Thomas Cox says, I'm Grady, so heck yeah, I would grab Tate and Gordon. Hell yeah. The Seahawks Network says, my dream scenario is we sign Flash and Tate. That'd be a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. Mark Thurston says, wow, super interactive. Something happen, Mark? Jeffrey says, what will Metcalf extension look like? The DK Metcalf contract extension is probably going to look like a 4-year, $23 to $25 million per year average. It's going to be a monster, Jeffrey. So 4 years at about $100 mil, 4 years at about $94 mil and $40 mil guaranteed, $45 million guaranteed. It's going to break the bank, might set the receiver market with a new contract. It's going to be that high. Devin Martell, hit the button, y'all. Only hit the like button, y'all. Only 3 so far. Oh, please do hit that like button if you happen to be listening and like what you're hearing. Only 3 likes so far. Come on, Chan. Come on, fam. Mark Thurston says, interested in hearing your prognostication on the Seahawks win-loss record for the upcoming season. I stand right now, Marcus, believing that they're at a 13-4 mark right now. I see a couple of the losses coming from within our own division. No surprise there. Loss coming out of the Green Bay game, and then some other wild card loss. Hard to predict on the schedule where that one's going to come from. I do believe that that's going to win us the division mark. I think that's good enough to get you past the first round and probably past the second round. I do think that this roster right now where it's constructed tops out at the conference championship, because I do expect that the Tampa Bay is going to get back there. Unless Tom Brady's arm falls off, they're probably getting back to that conference championship. And if you're not hitting their mark of 15-2, which they probably will hit, they get the first round bye. You're playing on the road in Tampa Bay. That's probably where I see the season hitting kind of a roadblock at that point. But with a couple of extra moves, Mark, a few extra moves, I think you can push back over the top of Tampa Bay and be in a position to truly be competing with them at that time. You probably could right now if everything breaks right. Tampa Bay gets a couple injuries. You get a remarkable amount of health. There are things that can break a certain way, but we're talking about, I guess, Mark, probabilities. And what's the probability to happen? And that would be where I would draw if I was a gambling man, my life was betting on it, right? That's where I would probably move towards thinking it was going. Thomas Cox says every NFC contender has a weakness. Heck, the Super Bowl champs quarterback is 40, 50 years old. They do. There is no NFC team that's got necessarily, every roster positional group filled out. And this could be a lot of ways with me, Thomas, being a little bit greedy in what I'm wanting to do and trying to set this stage for this upcoming season in a way that makes it undeniable. And that maybe that's not being feasible or realistic. I can own that. But it's just, I'm driven so hard by wanting this thing to keep going, to want to see a team that is able to compete and keep this era of football and this greatness of era of this good to greatness era of football going, and maybe even go back and get that other Lombardi or two, and how that would bring this whole era back together again, bring the greatness of this era back together again. And I look at it through only that lens above all. Dev Peterson says, I hate our kickoff siren on Madden 21. It sounds nothing like it. They've just gotten so lazy in Madden over the years. That's why I'm not super hyped this year for the upcoming one. I'd like to believe it's going to be good, but I'm kind of like, we'll see. Seahawks Network, I'm not actually. I'd rather see him playing than Eskridge. I probably was responding to something late on that, Seahawks Network. Leland Kimball, thank you for your membership, Leland. I do appreciate it and salute you for that membership. Hey, I love listening to your pod while I'm working. I appreciate that, Leland. I love when people are listening to me when they're working, man. That's awesome. That's how I'd like people to hear the channel. It's just, just got you in the background, cleaning up, hearing the thing. Mark Thurston, is Lamar Jackson really a better quarterback than Russell Wilson? No. Nope. No, what essentially the Ravens have done is exactly what the Panthers did with Cam Newton. You got a guy who came in who has this remarkable skill set, his mobility and his ability to run the ball and be effective as a runner, and he can sustain a little bit as a runner, which most quarterbacks can't. And we're going to lean into that. We're going to build our whole offense approach around it. Essentially, Mark Roman, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, who was the offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, when they implemented in that 2013 conference championship game that running heavy model with Colin Kaepernick. Because what the Niners is, they came in and they realized this defense has shut our offense down. We cannot run on them. They want to stop the run first and foremost. They're putting one techs out there on early downs, this huge wall of man to stop us. We've got to do something else. And we know in Cap, he can't throw enough to be able to be a high volume thrower against the Hawks, especially into that secondary. So they came up with this idea that we're going to use Kaepernick like a running back. We're going to have Frank Gore lead blocking for Kaepernick out on the edges. And it was effective through a lot of that game. As Sherman said in describing it, we didn't count on them using their quarterback like a running back. But that's what they did. And then they adjusted to it and they kind of stopped it as the game went along. Well, Roman took some of those cues back over into the Ravens. And Michael Slack, thank you for subscribing. I do appreciate it. He took some of those cues, what they had utilized there with San Francisco and Kaepernick, and fully implemented. I mean, he turned it up with the Ravens, and they're very exotic in their running game. It's awesome in how they get multiple guys, multiple linemen pulling out into space, but yet the defensive tackles still can't get the penetration to disrupt the play early on. They're very, very good with that stuff, but they are putting that kid out there and having him run around with his hair on fire. He's not sliding. He's not taking care of his body. He's taking punishment. And frankly, I think it's not going to allow him long-term to have a successful career, and that you're going to see this guy have his legs robbed from him by his late 20s, and he's not a good enough thrower of the football and has not developed enough as a thrower because the Ravens haven't been pushing to develop him enough as a thrower in the background to allow him to take that step forward in his career, where you come in early on as a mobile quarterback and then you get better, and then maybe you start to become better in your ability to throw the ball around. Russell was a little bit like that, in that he certainly became better at throwing the ball as he got more for year 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't think Jackson takes those same leaps forward. You didn't see it last year coming off his MVP year. In many ways, he somewhat kind of regressed throwing the football. Accuracy, it's just not there with him, and it's not going to come together with him there. Just like it was never really going to come together with Cam Newton. They're two guys you could say in the way that they throw the football that just doesn't allow him to consistently be accurate pushing the ball down the field, neither on short throws or on deep balls. Seahawks Network, I'm not gonna rest my faith in 5'8" rookie wide receiver if Lockett or Metcalf gets hurt. Tate is reliable and experienced. I'm with you. I'm with you there, man. Mark says, I have higher hope for this offense than most on here. I think they still need another running back that does third downs. I think the D is good, but still wonder about the cornerback. But it depends on if they run like a 3-3-5 D. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they go defensively, Mark. You know, especially Jamal and some of the stuff they did last year, which they changed up from the single high stuff. They went a lot more cover 2 last year, which was interesting. I'm definitely high on the offense as long as they can stay healthy. That's just a big part of it. I just don't know that you built a lot of depth. You know, Dwayne Brown goes down, you got Stone Forsythe at left tackle. How's that going to look? Ethan Bosick goes down, you got Fuller at center. How's that going to look? You know, Chris Carson's likely to go down at running back. He tends to go down. Then you're only with Rashad Penny and then Homer and Dallas behind him, which is probably echoing your sentiment of wanting a third down back. And Seattle was looking for a third down back this offseason. They tried to get Giovanni Bernard in here, I think, specifically to fill that role. So they understand and acknowledge that they do need it. And I would be open to, if they could find that kind of player out there via trade right now, Mark, that'd be a great addition, is find a third down specialist backed. That what we really haven't had here since probably Leon Washington. I mean, has it been that long since we've had a third down back? So it would be nice. And I think you could definitely, hey, I'm all on board with Sherman or Gilmore or both. So I agree with you on the depth and needing to get a little bit better as far as corner goes. I think they're going back to 4. They're going to be on 4-3. I don't think they do a 3-3-5. I think Coach Carroll, he's been a 4-3 guy throughout his career. He'd been coaching for 40, 50 plus years. He's not going to change now at this point in time and switch to something like that. It'll be a 4-3 team that runs 3-4 principles, and they're going to stick into that mold of things, I think. It's a matter of, to me, whether they go blitz heavy. I think there's more of an argument to be made that they might embrace more bear fronts to build into the blitzes and to take advantage of Jamal Adams' blitzing ability. Drew Garcia says, Tate Diva, why do you think he was cut by the Giants? Always getting benched and always injured. Certainly probably a big reason, Drew Garcia, that he is not been signed this offseason by other NFL teams. And to your point, he has bounced around to a couple different teams, Lions to there, and Seahawks. So he's been around a couple spots. Eagles, I think he had to stay in over there with them. And he does get beat up a lot. Part of that, I think, him getting beat up a lot is he's a guy that runs with a lot of ferocity with the ball in his hands after he makes a catch, and he's going to take a lot of extra hits because of that. But I think if you get him slotted into a rotational role, you don't rely on him as your number one slot guy. Eskridge could be that, but he's your fourth or fifth guy, the first guy off the bench essentially to come fill in. He could fill a little bit of like what the Doug Baldwin role was in 2013, where Doug wasn't always the starter, but okay, Sidney goes down, now you can put him out there. And you feel a little bit better about the depth. The other thing I'll say with this Garcia is that I don't think, Tate's at the number one top of anybody's list to begin this offseason, but you just haven't really, outside of the Dwayne Eskridge picks, addressed the wide receiver position, while you've also lost David Moore. Granted, you've got some good guys already stacked up there, but it's a matter of just now this is kind of the only method, the only way really to upgrade the receiver position. There's no wide receiver trade out there that's really you can go be made to happen unless you're going to wait for around the trade deadline. Seahawks Network, I'm just saying, zero faith in a rookie in general in any situation, so I have no faith Eskridge will produce more than Tate in the same situation. I agree with that. Thomas says it's funny the NFC West teams are either copying or figuring out a way to beat Seattle. Rams made desperation moves. Cards have Wilson-type quarterback, and now Niners got Lance. Yeah, I think that they're trying to do their different things. I think they kind of have different philosophy in what they're trying to do a little bit. I certainly think the Rams, and going back to the McVay hire, have been having an eye towards beating Seattle pretty much at the top of their list in a lot of ways. But it's definitely been with both McVay and the Shanahan hire. If you want to look at the base of that, those hires were made to kind of beat Seattle. Because why? Both of those two have kind of some of the same offensive roots. Like they run their offenses differently, but it all comes back from the Bill Walsh tree of things, and it all comes out of the basically kind of Shanahan tree of things. But at the heart of it, what that offense is looking to do is attack what? A disciplined defense. It wants to hit a disciplined defense, not a wild defense that you can't predict, that's coming from every angle, but we're going to attack that defense of we know where they're going to be, we know how they play to their tendencies, and then we're going to attack up against those tendencies. And Seattle Seahawks have run over the last 10 years one of the more disciplined defenses in the entire NFL. So it's one of those ones that then is made more vulnerable to be attacked by the offensive coordinators who are built to attack it. Kind of interesting. Shows you how good we've been. Diehard Hawks fan, in your opinion, list 3 players that break out on the defensive line. I'm going Alton Robinson off the top, Diehard Hawks fan, because I was really impressed by his first year, getting 4 sacks on a limited snap basis. He had a high pass rush win rate. Kid creates quick pressure. He's not a high motor guy. He creates quick pressure, so he'll be number 1. Number 2, I'm thinking here. Number 2 is going to be Poona Ford. The reason for this, Diehard Hawks, is Poona Ford's played the 1 tech throughout the first part of his career with little sprinklings of 3 tech, but they really had Jaron Reed running 3 tech for the last couple of years full time over there. Poona Ford is set up with his natural 5'11" height and sort of easy leverage wins that he gets coming off the ball to when you put him in one-on-one situations, he should be able to flourish there. I look for a guy in Poona Ford to be able to get up into 5-6 sacks this year, operating out of that 3 tech position while still being a dominant force in the running game. So he would be my number 2. My number 3, is going to be Aldon Smith. How do you like that? I know this isn't a young player. I know this is a guy before who's had a lot of sacks in this league. But you look back last year, he had a lot of sacks out the first gate. I think 3 or 4 sacks through the first 5 games and then like 1 sack through the back end of the schedule. He got wore down. He had to play too many snaps. Put him in as a rotational guy. Keep him fresh, especially coming off not having played football for a couple of years last year, and you get him a chance to operate out of the Leo, which is where he's going to operate. The Leo defensive end position in the Seahawks defense is the one that is best suited and best set up to go out there and flourish. So if you go out there and you put him there out on that edge and you let him go do that, I think he's going to go out there and eat. And he gets to operate and take advantage of having that CenturyLink Lumen Field crowd noise that gives him that extra step, that gives him that extra little bit of juice. So he's a guy who could push to that 10-sack range this year if he's allowed to play, if he doesn't get suspended. But he'd be my 3rd guy. And if not him, then Darrell Taylor behind that. Seahawks Network says, hell no, Freddie Swain is nothing more than a wide receiver 4. I'd rather have Gordon and Tate over both of them. Me too. I don't think Freddie Swain is anything more than the wide receiver 4. I think there's a reason Freddie Swain was a 7th-round pick. He's a guy who had a couple catches last year, but I think some Seahawks fans get a little caught up in Freddie Swain being an answer. Freddie Swain should not be the answer to any question as it regards to our Seahawks. He's just a guy. Truth as I know it, your comment got booted out there. I don't know. Dev says, you excited for the 1983 jerseys coming back? Yes. Yeah, 100%. I've been asking for it for years. 100 years. I just, come on, guys. It's going to look awesome seeing Wilson in that jersey, man. You kidding me? He's going to look amazing. Bobby, DK, get out of here. I love it, man. I love it. I'm glad the NFL kind of figured that one out. You never see the NFL leaving dollar bills on the table. That was one they're leaving dollar bills on the table. Garcia says, hot take, we sweep the Rams. I love it, Garcia. I love it, man. Garcia says, I bet you have no faith when we drafted DK. No, quite the opposite on that. Quite the opposite on that, frankly. I was stunned. It was stunning to me, Garcia, in the respect of, when I did my pre-draft breakdown of wide receivers that I looked at the Seattle Seahawks drafting, I left him off the list, but because I thought he was going to be a top 10 pick. Freak show talents like this don't come through the NFL. Guys that are 6'4", who run 4.33, who can jump out the building, who are physical as hell. And one thing that you know, you saw, you go, okay, you looked at his tape. He's playing with a horrific quarterback in college, a guy who couldn't throw the football. He was asked to run a real limited route tree. The Ole Miss offense was trying to feature A.J. Brown at every turn. Certainly the injury thing had you a little worried, but no, to get a freak show talent like that as the last pick in the second round, that's amazing value, Garcia. It's amazing value. I think you're talking Seahawks Network too, Garcia. Sorry. But I did like DK when he was drafted. Maybe it wasn't a question for me, but I did. Garcia, Eskridge is 24, right? That's right. Eskridge is 24 years old. Diehard Hawks fan, I would think we are going to have a top 3 passing game with Waldron. It'll be hard to always have a top 3 passing game with a Coach Carroll coach team because he's always going to gravitate towards back to being balanced, and he's always going to be in his offensive coordinator's ear to remember that running game. Remember that running game. And so he's always going to drive him back into that direction a little bit. The only way you'll probably see us as a top three passing game is if the defense falls on its face again like they did at the start of last season. Or basically just that. The defense is allowing the other team to score so many points, you're forced into having to. But a top 10 offense, I think more diehard Hawks fan, I think I'd say a top 3 efficiency in passing offense. I think maybe that's what you're meaning to maybe say, is that there'll be a top 3 efficiency in passing. Yards per attempt will be through the roof. I think the accuracy with Russell Wilson will be through the roof. I think he could push in this offense to some 75% completion percentage in this offense and the way it's designed. So it'll be more top 3-ish in that realm. It just won't have the volume of plays to make it from a yardage standpoint be top 3, I don't think. Thomas Cox says, no way Flash isn't in the NFL. I'm surprised Goodell didn't have him killed. That's the only thing he hasn't done at this point. Gotten him beat up and killed. Garcia, they said they would not suspend players who smoke weed. It's true, Garcia, but if you're already in the program, you're still stuck in the program and held to the old designs of it, even if the rules were changed, as I understand it on that. Thomas says, I think Staley and Waldron will be the Rams' biggest coaching losses. Staley is legit, and I think Waldron has traits to be like McVay. I hope he is. I think the Staley thing definitely hurts them. I think that's one of the, and I liked what they did with their defense. The new split safety look in the NFL is becoming the new de jure defensive scheme to implement in, and Staley's at the head of that. And he absolutely, look, he certainly was allowed to flourish a little bit when you're having Aaron Donald inside and you got Ramsey on the outside. That's going to make you look good. But I think it can be as well. It doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be those guys were determining the success or it was him determining the success and allowing them to shine. It could be a bit of both, and that he understood how to utilize them right, understood how to bend the rest of the defense around those two talents, and that is what makes a great defensive coordinator. Paul Third, people's perception of Garoppolo changed when Shanahan stuck to the running game in 2019 playoffs. But I remember what he did to the Green Bay and New Orleans defenses that year. Foolish to underestimate him. I read that in a Emperor Palpatine voice, Paul Third. Garoppolo's had some good games against teams. This is a little bit of he against our defense and our team, and the way Coach Carroll's played him recently, he's struggled. He's not been really good against this particular defense. And certain quarterbacks with their skill sets and how they throw the football can maybe struggle against other defenses at times. And I think that that's been a bit of the case with Garoppolo in Seattle. Maybe he's there to light us up, maybe. But I think, Paul, part of this, though, is if the Niners think Garoppolo is so dangerous, as you say, why are they giving up 3 first-round picks to go get a quarterback of the future? It would seem to me that the 49ers, by simply their actions alone, which keeping Garoppolo now, keeping him next year, he gets cheaper, that would have been the smarter way to go, and then use your first-round picks on getting other players in there if you were really on board with Garoppolo. But the Niners themselves don't seem to have any faith in him. And you very well may indeed, Paul, see him move before the start of the season. I don't think it's likely, but it could happen, especially if there's a team in the NFL that gets into a desperate, dire straits with their quarterback position, and they throw the 49ers a draft pick that has not been offered up until this point. Mark, will the Hawks re-sign KJ Wright? Probably not, Mark. Probably not at this point, not unless there's an injury situation. Dev, the thought of losing and not having Russ is disturbing and scary. I'm glad I'm not the only one, Dev. I'm glad I'm not the only one. And I think there's a lot of you out there in that thing, but it is to me too. I think it would be it's a scary proposition. And I'm one of the harder people out there on Russell Wilson. I'm one of the people that'll dig in on him as much as anybody else for the things that he doesn't do well, because he is a guy that asks for all of the money every time. But at the end of the day, I don't want to go out there looking for another quarterback. I know how hard it is to find a franchise quarterback. It is hard as hell. Hell, it's got the Packers in a position of drafting a quarterback when they still had a quarterback at an MVP level just because they're so freaked out by the prospect of it. I don't want to be facing that. I don't want to be in rebuild mode. Robert Pennington, how you doing, Rob? My brother. Says free Josh Gordon and sign him. That's what I say, Robert. That's what I say. The truth is, I know I get modded out. Thomas Cox, if the Bears offered what the Colts traded for Dickerson, 3 1s, 3 2s, and 3 3s, Wilson would have been traded. It would have been traded. It being realistic, I don't want Wilson to be gone as much as anyone. I agree with you, Thomas. What you had to do, if the Seahawks were going to move on from Wilson this offseason, you had to pay for Wilson in draft capital, and then you had to pay in draft capital for the $39 million in dead money hit that the Seattle Seahawks were going to have to sustain by moving off from him. You're going to have to do both of those things. The Bears did 1/2 of those things, and they barely even did 1/2 of those things in offering the 3 first-round picks for Russell Wilson. It was essentially, you need to offer the equivalent of, to me, 5 as crazy as it sounds, 5 first-round picks to get him this offseason because of the $39 million dead money hit on top of getting Russell Wilson. So, yeah, I don't think anybody came close to making that offer, but I also think, Thomas, that we go into next offseason and it's only going to cost $26 million to move on from Russell Wilson. I don't think Seattle's going to expect as much draft compensation return as they did this offseason because the dead money hit has been that much lower down. Tommy says he isn't going out like Barry Sanders, best running back all time. He will go to a team that can win it all. I agree. Thomas, and honestly, how many top paid quarterbacks have gone to Super Bowl after their rookie deal? Not many, man. Not many. That is not too many. That's for sure. It's harder and harder to do. I mean, that is the model, and that may be the model for Coach Carroll to embrace. I mean, they may be able to find another rookie quarterback and build the roster around him and duplicate what they did in 2012, 13. I mean, they may be able to pull that off. I think it's a hard one to pull off, especially when you're not able to bring the advantages that the Seattle Seahawks had at that time to pull off the Russell Wilson rookie transition and young quarterback transition to get into the Super Bowl. And that being that when Coach Carroll came in this league, he had a real good amount of knowledge base of all of the college players coming in for a couple of years. He'd been out there recruiting them. He'd been in their homes. You lost a little of that. You had the innovation of your defense. You had the innovation of looking at 6-foot cornerbacks when most of the league weren't even considering 6-foot cornerbacks in the draft. Those days are done now. You don't have those same advantages. It's hard. Orlando Rocco, I hate that argument that the defense carried Seattle to those Super Bowls. So you're telling me, I hate that argument that the defense carried Seattle to those Super Bowls. So you're telling me if Matt Flynn was the quarterback, they still would have made it. They probably wouldn't have made the playoffs. I probably need Orlando at times. I try to qualify a little bit more of what I'm saying, but I sometimes speak fast and I probably am not as accurate in what I'm trying to say. What I was speaking towards in regards to the defense carrying Russell Wilson to the Super Bowl is not that I believe that, but that there's the narrative out there. And why I was bringing that up is because we were looking at it through the lens of what Russell thinks and what he thinks the general consensus out there thinks of him, and specifically in regards to his legacy. Okay, so when Russell looks at it and he hears these people out there nationally that continue to spew the BS line that you're talking about, which is BS, Orlando, it is BS that the defense only carried those teams. That's BS. Russell had a hand in going to the Super Bowl. Russell was an important, vital part of the Super Bowl, no doubt about it. But the narrative out there, right? Those narratives that exist out there he is very much worried about, because we know Russell Wilson is one of the more PR savvy guys out there in the entire NFL. That narrative is that those defenses carried him, that he was along for the ride. It's incorrect, but that's the narrative. And then what he's trying to do is he wants to move that narrative out the door. He wants to get people to wrap their head around, I am a winner. I am a guy that can carry a team. I can take a team to a Super Bowl. So it's not what I think, but it's the national perspective that exists out there outside of Seattle, Orlando, that exists out in the general talking heads and pundits and analysts. D Nugget, thank you for the $5 donation. I'm sorry it took me a little while to get to your deal on it here as I got behind the chat today, but I do appreciate it. And you know you're awesome, my man. It says 4th of July gift for the great Brandino. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Because he is a consistent hustler and brings good content and truth nuggets. Go Hawks. I bring them truth nuggets. Blip, 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 blip. Nugget, nugget, nugget. I'm the 18 nugget piece that McDonald's doesn't even offer. But thank you so much for that $5 donation, D Nugget. You are cool, brother. Appreciate it. Paul. Oh, Randall, thank you for the $20 donation, Randall. You're always so nice, man. Randall always comes in with a $20 donation. I appreciate you, brother. It says, happy 4th to everyone. Can't catch much of the show tonight, but wanted to say go Hawks. Y'all have fun and be safe. Hey, you do the same, Randall. Let off a few fireworks for me over there in Central Washington. Hope you guys aren't burning up over there too much, but happy July, 4th of July to everybody out there. I appreciate all you guys for hopping on in here, and I hope you guys have a great weekend planned. Go out there and have a ton of fun. Paul Third. Thank you for the $5 donation. Randall, Paul, D Nugget. You guys are awesome, man. I really do appreciate it. Paul says this roster can win a Super Bowl, and so can the rosters of any NFC West team except the Cardinals. Hawks is definitely the top most heavy roster. Agreed. And I think that's a little bit of that you play in the toughest division in football. I think from top to bottom, you are in the toughest, and there are teams that can go out there and win it. They are. It's really a matter of us looking at the shades of, where you're at. Are you a high likely to win it? Are you low likely to win it? Are you a mid likely to win it? And if there's a way to push that likelihood up higher, if there's a way to get yourself out ahead of that ball prior to the season starting, to get as much talent as you can, is that worth doing? Or is it smarter to sit back and wait? Maybe it's smarter to sit back and just remain patient and keep the flexibility of the salary cap. See what comes down the track. That could be also a smarter way to go here. I've got to acknowledge that. Devin Martzall, enjoying the Patreon play. Enjoyed the Patreon page. Well, thank you for joining my Patreon, Devin. I appreciate it. Enjoyed the articles. I like it because I'm constantly looking for more Hawk talk. Thanks. I'm looking to expand as much as I can, Devin, and certainly for the members on my channel and those over on Patreon, I'm going to try to give you guys more and more stuff as I can, because it does help the channel expand, eventually be able to do this thing full time, which is the eventual goal here down the track. So thank you for being Patreon. Thanks for getting on the train early here. I do appreciate it. I'm going to keep those articles coming. So I love writing. So Dev says, what are the odds of Kyler Murray retiring and going to play baseball? I don't think it's great odds, because he's kind of made his bed with playing football, and you'd have to sign up for going back in the minor leagues and going on the road. I know he's a really talented guy, so he would probably get through those minors quick, but do you want to go do bus rides? You want to go do, 90 bus rides a year interstate, with younger guys than you at that point. I don't know if he's going to sign up for that as much at that point in time. But the fact that he said that he could still want to go back and play baseball, to me, was a little bit of an eye-opener. There's no way you're going to be able to do both of those sports at the same time, playing the quarterback position. I think it'd be hard to do it now as just a positional player. This isn't the back in the day of the 80s or the early 90s with Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders. I think it would be, there's somebody out there who can probably pull it off. There'll probably be somebody eventually who does pull it off. But I do think that it does limit you as a player a little bit to try to do both. I don't think it's likely, but I think you would leave the door open if there seems this weird feeling with Kyler. It's undeniable through his first couple of years that he's been very productive. He's had one of the best opening 2 years to any quarterback in NFL history. But there also seems to be something missing there. I'm not sure if I can quite put my finger on it exactly. It's not necessarily he's not missing arm strength. make every throw in the book. He's more mobile than Russell Wilson is. He's right on par with Lamar Jackson in the open field, and he truly embraced that last year. He doesn't protect himself like Lamar, which makes me concerned. But there just is something there I can't quite quantify that gets me a little bit hesitant with Kyler. Can't quite put my finger on it exactly, but I'm not quite sold on him. I think that there's something, and maybe it's a little bit of that 1 foot out the door still, where he's not completely all in on the football approach. Atom, Atomm, says, Brandon, love this channel. Thank you so much, Adam. I've watched all of them, but a lot have dropped off as I've gotten busy. Well, I appreciate you catching whatever you can. Not this one. The best content for Seahawks fans, bar none. Can you explain the donation process? Yeah, so I've got a couple options. You can donate through, obviously, our YouTube channel here, which I don't have any return on that. That's just a donation, which comes to me. But I've also got a membership program. It's 2 membership levels. One membership level gives you emojis and emoticons and access to special live streams that I do and whatnot. Same thing with the next level, which is the Ring of Honor level. But then I'm going to do some written articles and a couple of other streams for them as well, in addition to it. So the membership level got a couple things. The Ring of Honor thing is really the weekly articles I write or the bi-weekly articles I write regarding the team in regards to that. And the Patreon page just kind of catches all of that on the other side, because some folks want to do the memberships through YouTube, some want to go through Patreon. So I like to give you folks options, either way on that one. But if you can't afford it, I don't expect anybody to donate. It's only if you can afford it. It's always appreciated. And I just like the fact you guys jump in and listen to me talk and yak. So I appreciate it on that basis alone. Mark says, are we done with KJ Wright? We're probably done, KJ, with KJ Mark. And I know it took me a little while to get around to your question. Sorry on that. I get behind on the chat sometimes. Just get caught behind. But yeah, I think the ship's probably sailed at this point. Outside of him being willing to come back at a real cheap deal, I just don't think they'll do it, or there being an injury. Thomas says, I think Seattle needs to find out if Blair, Brooks, and Barton actually work out. I think with Brooks and Blair, it's definitely need to kind of figure out there. I think they know that they got in Brooks. Brooks is going to be a middle linebacker of the future. Blair is the more interesting question, especially as it concerns Quandre Diggs and his potential extension. Dev says, Sherman is going to retire with us. I believe Sherman is going to retire with us. Well, whether he retires with us and playing a couple years or does that thing that the players do where they sign with the team for one day and then they retire, it will be one of those two things. But I don't know. I don't know if he does come to us this year. I think he's trying to be patient. He was last time he was a free agent as well. He didn't just sign right out the gate. He kind of waited a little bit of time. I think he's waiting a little bit like we were talking about with KJ, where he's a veteran who's kind of waiting to see if there's a team out there that loses a cornerback somewhere and then they're willing to pay him what he wants to be paid. Whereas I'm sure right now if Seattle's offering him anything, it's not offered with what he probably wants to be making. Thomas says, I got a feeling if Seattle got Baker, Seattle would have not have traded for Diggs or Jamal. It's a possibility, Thomas. It's an interesting point. If they wouldn't have got Budda Baker, they wouldn't have gone for Diggs or Jamal. You might be on the button with that, because at that point you move Bradley McDougald to free safety, but is Bradley going to be able to still shine there at free safety, or are they going to want to look for something else? It's an interesting point. The other thing, too, on that, Thomas, is does that affect the Marquise Blair selection in the second round as well? That's a big domino. That's a big one. Like, that's a domino that's got 3 dominoes deep to it. If you get Budda Baker, do you have to make the trade for Diggs or Jamal or Marquise Blair? Or does I don't know. That's why when you make a bad move, it's not just a bad move in a vacuum. It's a bad move that then has corresponding tentacles down the line that end up hurting you in other ways. Thomas Cox says, I wish Seattle would have drafted Baker over McDowell. I would have too, Thomas. They had a great relationship with Coach Peterson at UW at that time. They knew very well those players what they were. I don't know why as well either. I guess just they were coming off the man giant in Cam Chancellor, and they didn't want to go to the puny-sized dude. It was too big of a transition to make at that time, I guess, at the strong safety position. Tommy says, Metcalf's contract may be big, but he's a literal game changer, and the salary is going to skyrocket. Tommy, I got no problems making DK Metcalf the highest paid receiver in the NFL. Done. Generational talent. Don't come down the track every once in a while. When you got one, appreciate it, respect it, pay it, and be happy that you got it. I'm all of those things and more. No issue whatsoever. 23 to 25 million per to sign him on that deal. I'll pay the going rate. He is worth it. Truth is, I know it. Why am I being timed out? I hope it was an accident. I don't know. I was wondering on that too. We have a couple people being timed out here. Truth is, I know it. I don't know if my mods are pushing, but nobody time out anybody right now as we go forward. So if you are timing anybody out, let the chat go as it is. I know I'm behind on the chat a little bit, but that way I can figure out if this is just it could be something. Truth is, I know, or just is getting, because Go Hawks 2021 got a message retracted. So I don't know if I'm seeing messages pulled out. I don't know if somebody's just doing something or what, but you're back on now. I can see you, so we're good. Go Hawks 2021 says Leon Washington was great. Leon Washington was great, man. A third down running back is awesome when you have it. And when you don't have one, you sometimes forget about it because you're like, Carson can get the job done. He's good enough there at the spot. But man, when you have a guy that can do the pass protection, that can operate like a receiver out of the backfield, and you can put those things together like that, man, that is a big boon to have happen at that point. You know what I mean? That's a nice little benefit to bring into measure at that spot. So, yeah, I would love to see them target it. The team tried to this offseason. There's not really a guy out there that jumps out at me at this point that would fit the role. But it'd be great if they could find somebody. If there's somebody that comes out that they like, that they can fit in that position. Because I think Travis Homer's got the inside track at this point because he's better in pass protection, I think, than DJ Dallas is. But you certainly would like to have a little more confidence there at the third down running back role if you could. That's why I say it's like there's a variety of ways to upgrade this team. It doesn't have to just be through the cornerback room, or it doesn't have to just be through the wide receiver room or the running back room. Or, you can there's a couple places or ways to attack this. It's just more about what's available. Tommy Eden says, what if we got Larry Fitzgerald? I know it's unlikely, but that would be so good. I'd like Larry Fitzgerald. I would. I don't know if it's likely to happen. Part of me thinks Larry's just holding out to see what Minnesota's got going down there, and if they're a contender, because he comes from Minnesota, and there's always been rumors of him maybe going back to Minnesota. But I like Larry to be all right. I know he's definitely getting older. He can't do all of what he once did, but him paired up with Russell, there's something about that interests me. There's something about that has me tantalized. Garcia says, I still hate that we did not draft Montez Sweat. Yeah. That's I was mentioning kind of two of the bigger disappointments in recent era of big mistakes Seattle's made. I mentioned McDowell, and right behind it being LJ Collier, Garcia. And I think that was a draft where Seattle got way too cute with that trading back thing that Schneider can tend to do, right? Where he's picking in one spot. He's like, oh, we've got three guys we like: Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat, and Brian Burns. One of the three of them will be available when we trade back to, and then all three of them go off the board. And then they get desperate. And they're like, but we need a defensive end because we only took Ziggy Ansah on free agency this offseason. That's all we got. We need something more than this. What else? Who's the next guy on your list? I mean, LJ Collier, but he's like a late second, early third, maybe. But just drafted him. And I think that they did that Garcia. That move was completely made out of desperation. And I would have much rather have a Montez or Brian Burns right now rather than an LJ Collier plus that pick they got by trading back. Thomas, I thought Larry retired, but if Fitzgerald comes to Seattle, that'd be sick. I don't know if he's full on retired. Maybe he is. I thought he was still kind of keeping things open a little bit. As Tommy says, technically. Go Hawks 2021 says, be safe also. Go Hawks, my man. Oh, we got a new member. Thank you for your membership. Roxanne Roll! Thank you for becoming a member, Roxanne. You're awesome. I really appreciate it. One of my OGs, Roxanne. One of my OGs. OGs. Get down here. Rosalind Smith, everybody is forgetting that Quandre Diggs used to play with Matthew Stafford for years. He's already tweeted when Stafford got signed to the Rams that he sees picks coming his way. I love it, Rosalind. I love it. He knows. Matt Stafford's one of those gunslinging type guys. He's a guy that's going to put up a lot of yards. He's going to throw a lot of footballs, but every game he's going to give you 2 to 3 chances. Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick's a little bit like this with the Washington football team. He's a little bit like this way. These streaky quarterbacks where they will make throws over the course of the game that will cause your jaw to drop. But they will throw your guys the ball a couple times. Whether those INTs or drops or picks probably determines your success in the game and if you're going to win or not. But he will give you those throws because he's going to overtrust his arm. He's going to try to squeeze it in a little bit too tight. And you're right. Quandre Diggs, having played for him for years, will know his tendencies. All that time that he practiced against him, I think he might have a little inside track. I will say though too, Rosalind, is that Quandre also does in his tweets. You see him posting in there that he thinks he's a real good player. He thinks it's going to be awesome for the Rams picking him up. It's going to be a benefit to them and helpful to Stafford's career as well. But hopefully that can help him and give him a little inside info there. Thomas says Fitzgerald would be good with Russ. Yeah, he isn't what he used to be, but that would be a sick dig against the Cards. It would be a sick dig against the Cards. And the thing I think I like about it most is so much of this offense could be a lot of reading on the fly, the detailed centric nature of how they're telling us this offense is built within, the intricacies within the offense. Well, that gets me thinking. And that gets me thinking, okay, you got a receiver who can now read on the fly something, and now you got a quarterback in Wilson who knows he's got a smart receiver out there who will see it exactly as he sees it, and that maybe that's an attacking and opening in a zone and less about that receiver still being really sudden off the line of scrimmage or, being very as fast as he once was, and that you could still be a little bit effective in that role, especially considering that to me, Wilson's better at feeding that type of receiver than a guy like Kyler Murray, who's still trying to kind of feel his way along in the league a little bit. Dad Peterson says, what primetime game are you going to wear our 83 jerseys? Well, I got an 80 jersey, and I'll be rocking that out as much as possible because that's my Lucky Largent jersey, and we win at a 79% clip when I wear a Lucky Largent jersey. So maybe I'll go from game one. Maybe I got to go game one. And if it's a win, we just got to keep that money going. I won't wash it. You guys won't have to smell it. You'll just see me over here in my own stank, win after win. Garcia says we had to pick 21 or 29. We started out, Garcia picked 21, but then they traded back to, I think, 29. It was back to 29 or 32. They traded like twice back. But they had a chance at 21 of a couple of guys in there. Truth is, I noticed the Sweat was gone before Collier, wasn't he? Yep. They went in that mode of picks right after we traded back. Deb Pearson says, DK is our out there showboating and being a diva. All receivers are divas, Deva. All great receivers to me tend to be divas. Just about all of them. It's just the way it is. I don't like it, but it is what it is. Garcia says Taylor, Brooks are the future of this defense. I was so happy when we got them. I'm definitely higher on Taylor and Brooks than I am on LJ Collier. I think Taylor's got a lot of potential. We don't know what we got. We got to see what he is on the field. So we got to see him playing a little bit. But I liked his tape in college. I think Brooks' best position, Garcia, is going to be middle linebacker. I think there's going to be some good and bad with him at the will. There'll be some good in the run game. You'll see some bad in the passing game. And I think that we're going to have to kind of take our lumps with that as it goes down. But I do think once he gets slid into middle linebacker, that's a Pro Bowl level middle linebacker when he's moved over there. The coverage liabilities are a little bit lessened, I think, at middle linebacker than they are at the will. And that he will be a good player in this defense at that time. So I like them a lot as well. I've got a Russian username in here, and I'm sorry I can't read that name, but thank you for hopping in. It says, hello. In your opinion, who is the best football player in the world? Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Aband, Robert Lewandowski, or Zoltan Ibrahimovic? Well, as you can probably tell by my lack of ability to pronounce most of those names, I'm not keenly aware of them. I will give you my most best guess here, understanding them. I believe Cristiano's getting a little bit older, and Lionel just a little bit too, but I'm going to go with Lionel this phase. Okay? I'm going to go with Lionel. But that's also saying and acknowledging I know nearly nothing about soccer. Truth is, I know it. Stafford is a loser, and McVay is a douche. I predict 5-12 for the Rams. The starting quarterback and all those coaches are gone for a reason. And I predicted too, truth as I know it, if it played out like that, you'd suddenly hear all these pundits that are predicting them to be in first place and top of the line and all that, who suddenly go, well, we all knew this. We all probably should have known this was coming. I mean, you lose this and you lose that and you lose this and you lose that. How good can you really be at the end of the day when you factor that all in? And I think that they'll all do a 180 real quickly on it. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. I am predicting a 10-win season for them, truth as I know it. But that would be with acknowledging as well. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see them go to a 5-12 season. I would be surprised a little bit to see this be the year that the NFC West loses a little bit of its shine, where the Niners aren't as good as people think, the Rams aren't as good as people think, and the Cardinals are kind of still in that middling state of things. I think that will kind of knock us down as a division a little bit, but I think that this is the year that kind of comes into play a little bit more than it has prior, where we have been kind of far and away the best division in football recently. Thomas, I think Wilson leaves more than likely Carroll. I think Wilson leaves more than likely Carroll goes. Carroll is trying to win the Super Bowl that he lost. Then we will see how great Schneider is. Could be. The 5-year extension Coach Carroll signed last year has me hesitant to believe that there's any way, shape, or form that Carroll moves on within the first couple of years of that deal. I think he is still got all that same energy, and he just wants to keep going. Strikes me as one of those guys, and could be wrong on this, that's just aware of older guys that retire, and that this, 2 weeks after they retire from their job, they kick the bucket because that was their whole drive in life. And Carroll strikes me as kind of that type of guy a little bit. I don't think it's likely Carroll goes at this point. I think he would stay over Wilson, more likely. Maybe he's told Wilson to hang in there this year, stay with me one more season, and if I don't get you to the promised land after this year, then I will retire, and we'll bring in a new coach to build the offense around you, and you'll get everything that you want. That could be a conversation that they've had, which is, I think, what you're intimating a little bit about. That's possible. That's possible for sure, and would make a lot of sense as to how they've gotten to this ceasefire state now when things weren't yet seemingly still fully rectified. Tommy, I think Kyler can't handle the moment. I think he bails under serious pressure, just my opinion. Could be that I'm seeing on it and I'm not able to quite put my finger on. I haven't seen him play out necessarily super huge in games yet on style, to your point, when things are kind of the chip. Seems like when the chips are down, he kind of does fold a little bit. He gets up in his feelings, a little bit less of that placid leader, kind of archetype, and more of a little flippant a little bit. Ethan says it's pretty crazy that DK seems to be getting even bigger and stronger by the time next season starts. Like you saw it, the man looked like he put on 20 pounds of muscle from his first to second years. Yeah, I agree. And that's what happens with players, man. We like to, I think, and I'm as guilty of anybody of this. You get a guy that comes into the sport and you think, he's a finished product, and this guy is what he is. But guys develop at their own speed, and guys do continue to develop, especially when they're young players. DK came in as like a young 21-year-old guy into this league. That's going to give you more time, and especially when you're in a weight room full time, no more classes at college. You just get to concentrate on topping your body out to the fullest. I think that helps you to get into that next extra gear, and he has taken well advantage of it. It's part of why as well. I think I thought he was going to succeed in the NFL. You see a guy built like that in college who has the work ethic to work on himself in that way, and you got to feel like he'll put the time in to work on the things that he needs to work on. Even if it's not all refined out as it should be right out the gate like you'd want. The Truth Is I Know, it says you need a blog. I put a blog together, Truth Is I Know, but I did it for my member channel right now. It's my members and Patreons get my blog right now. So I got it going right now. I might do something eventually here on a website with that. So I know I got to do something with that though. Get more of that going. Go Hawks 2021. How are the rookies doing? Stone Forsythe, new signing, looking good. Stone looked good by all accounts in rookie minicamps and minicamp. Coach Carroll's a big man who moves really well, which is exactly kind of his base thing that we all thought with him when he got. So it's good to hear that translated through. You don't get a lot minicamp rookie wise. We got to, they're in shells. They're not really hitting each other. It's just kind of a lot of just dancing around out there. But everything looked pretty decent from the jump on him. Thomas says, with Kyler, I get the feeling that he gets afraid of getting hit, but then he gets antsy. Yeah, I don't think he sits kind of in the pocket as much and just kind of hangs in there a little bit. Some of that, I think, comes into a little bit of like we see with Russell Wilson. It gets hard when you're a smaller quarterback. A little bit of this has got to be the appreciation for Russell Wilson and developing that in his game. And that, sometimes he does bail on the quarterback and he drops back, but he's also built in things into his game to kind of overcome it that I think Kyler has to kind of learn some of those things in his game. And I think that people made the comparison of Kyler to Russell Wilson, and that was what drove him to really be the number one overall selection. This is like an upgraded Russell Wilson, faster than Russell Wilson, maybe a little more arm strength than Russell Wilson. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more that goes into Russell Wilson than just some of his measurables, being just his height, but with a big deep arm and some mobility. There's more to him in that. And there's things I'll knock with his game. There's little small parts to his game as far as feel goes that I think he's got that Kyler doesn't. And he does play, I think, a little more fearless than Kyle does within the pocket at times. Well, Kyler's definitely fearless when he's run the ball because that guy has not learned how to slide. Dev says KJ might go to the Raiders. I could see the Raiders jumping on him. I could see the Jets jumping on him, Dev. Either of those two teams I could see coming into play on that. But yeah, the Raiders are transitioning the Seattle Seahawks scheme this offseason, I think with Gus Bradley there. I want to say. So they definitely need to get their kind of personnel there, get the right personnel there. And Roxanne, thank you for being a new member. I appreciate it. Thomas, KJ could go to the Cowboys. Their other linebackers get injured too much. That would have been possible, Thomas, but they drafted 17 linebackers in this last draft. I know it sounds like a lot, but they actually drafted 17 linebackers, and they already had Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith. They are, to say that they are stacked up right now at linebacker is an understatement. But I could see it. You never know. You never know. ZXN GOAT. If there are any Ram, Cardinal, or 49er fans in here, please explain to me how y'all win the division. You're not going to get a lot of depth on that conversation, GOAT. You're not. They do come in here and they just say Stafford. If you're the Rams, they say Stafford. And if it's a 49er fan, they say Shanahan's a genius. And if it's the Cardinals, they say J.J. Watt and Kyler Murray's amazing. Or I haven't got, honestly, the Cardinal fan hasn't come in here and told me they're going to win the division. I got to be honest. I haven't gotten that come down the trek yet. But the other two sides, that's been over and over what I've heard again and again. And I keep asking them to unpack it a little bit more and give me a little bit more. Like, who's the guy that takes the step in his development of game to then overcome the personnel losses? You know, I get a guy like, well, Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp's going to fill in now for Jalen Smith, and you won't miss a beat. He's a high pick, and yeah, but he hasn't been able to see the field in his first couple of years. Why? Because we were really good with the player we had out there. Well, then you lost that player. See what I'm doing there? I don't know. Thomas says, but I wish Seattle got Derwin James too. When he got drafted a pick before, it broke my heart. Me too. That was another brutal one where Seattle could have had it. And if that's one of those ones where it's, target guys sometimes in the draft. Seattle, and they haven't done this as much now. They've gotten out of this philosophy a little bit in the last recent couple of drafts. But there through 2015, 16, 17, it was a lot of just trade back, accumulate the picks, get more swings, more bites at the apple. But you did so at the cost of passing on the upper level talent. It's like you put these guys all in the same bag and said they're all reasonably the same when there were differences between those in that bag. And you passed on guys, you let them go off the board, and it was not the smartest approach. I can wrap my head around wanting to pick up more draft picks in the draft and get more swings, but sometimes you need to go the other way too. Bofield Lynch, oh man, you just made me sad remembering all those idiotic times of us trading down or out in the first round all those damn times. Bad memories. Yeah, bad memories. Bad memories. Garcia's got us going 45-0 Rams. Thursday Night Football, Week 5. Garcia, I love it. I love your confidence, my man. Ramon, good to see you, Ramon. How you doing? Pete should go, but it's more likely that Russ does. I agree with you, Ramon. If you get through this year again, Ramon, after what you've done this year, and Pete's getting to see his philosophy and his defensive stylings pull about the same results that he's dealt with recently, why continue to do the same thing? And I wouldn't go to look at my star players being the problem in that scenario. I would look more internally within myself. But, probably not likely, unfortunately. It's probably likely the other way around. Ooh. Garcia, who won the Frank Clark and DK Metcalf trade? Yeah, Seattle won that trade 10 times over, Garcia. 10 times over. Frank Clark's been rated, I think, 82 out of 88 edge defenders in the NFL over the past 2 years. He's been money in the playoffs. Not a good run defender in the playoffs, but a guy who gets to the quarterback in the playoffs. But as a guy who just turns it on for the playoffs and then only turns it on as a pass rusher, that to me is not worth paying $23.5 million per year on top of a first and a second round pick that I had to give up via the trade. That's a little bit too much. Seattle came out way, way, way better on our end of that trade. Go Hawks, have auto. Go Hawks 2021. That's funny. Have Bobby auto jersey won 12 times, and when I do, they're 11-1. Go Hawks. It's funny though. Go Hawks 2021. When you have a lucky jersey, you don't always you go, well, now I'm gonna bring it out every week. You don't do that. You're like, no, it's got to be special occasions, and when we need a win, I'm gonna bring it out. When we need the win, I'm not gonna abuse it. I'm not gonna abuse the good juju there. Okay, I got to tap it into it at the right times. It's like that. It's like the apocalypse food, man, only when I need it. Go Hawks 2021 says Ronaldo. He's got Ronaldo. Okay. Tommy says LJ played better last year, not worthy of a first round pick, but he improved. If we get one good season out of him, it won't be our worst pick of all time list anymore. No, I mean, look, you've had picks back in the Holmgren era, you drafted a guy in the first round with the 26th overall selection, McIntosh, who never played a snap for you. That's a miserable pick. Malik McDowell in the second round never played a snap for you. Those guys are at the bottom of that list. But Collier's not gotten that far off the top of that list of things as far as first round picks go, and as bad in kind of a miss as he is. While he was a little bit improved last year, he improved to being a nearly league worst defensive end. He was the bottom of the barrel the previous year, and now he got just a little bit above that bottom of the barrel last year, and a guy who looks like now they're going to move into more of a defensive tackle position in the 3-tech, which doesn't speak to their confidence with him developing as a pass rusher on the edge, nor do all the signings they made this offseason. Indeed, there's a possibility here where even if he doesn't come into camp and show out, he's a cut candidate. If Rasheem Green comes in and finally taps into his huge amount of potential, and Alton Robinson continues to build on his growth, and you've got Dale Taylor now on the scene, well, guess who's on the chopping block? And I would not be the least bit surprised to see LJ end up being released here in this preseason if he doesn't take that step forward here this year. Because he's just, the flashes he gives is not anywhere near consistent production, which is what you need. And even Tommy on the low end of what I thought you were going to get with this guy, which I thought when you drafted him, I hated the draft pick. I called it a bust at the time. But I thought at the base of what you would get at that moment would be a run-stuffing 5 technique. A guy who could just set the edge as a defensive end and you couldn't run at him. But he's not even been consistent in that realm of things. It's tough. Emmanuel. My buddies and I got tickets for the Steelers-Seahawks game, Sunday night football game, week 6. Oh, Manuel, I'm super jealous. That's going to be an awesome game. That crowd's going to be lit on Sunday night. I mean, they're just going to be off the hook. It's the Steelers and all the 2005 Super Bowl stuff that carries with it. Woo! Says they'll have a mini bud to get ready for Pittsburgh. Hope it's a blowout. Also going to go to week 1 Colts game in Indy. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I think the Steelers game's on the road, isn't it? Is that at home or on the road? I forget. But that's awesome. You get into 2 games? Oh, I want to report, Emmanuel. I want to hear about how the stadium's doing. I want to hear, is it loud or are people being kind of quiet like they were right before the stadium closed down last year where we weren't getting as loud as we once were, or has it been rejuvenated? So I want to report, Emmanuel, when you come back in for week 1, I want to hear what your thoughts are in that stadium. I'm hoping it's just lit. People are just like caged wild animals, right? They've just been locked in a cage and people have been poking them with sticks. And now they're finally able to come out and just let loose. Garcia says they don't have to pick until 2026, that high schooler. Roxanne says consistency and winning is beautiful. Championships are drop dead gorgeous. Come on, Hawks. All in to win it all. That's where I'm at, Roxanne. I got no problem being a consistent winner, but man, nothing like raising that Lombardi. Nothing like seeing the smile on the coaches and players' faces as they lift that thing. Nothing like seeing the fans' exuberance. I was in New York when we won the Super Bowl, and we took over Manhattan. The 12th man took over Manhattan. It was Seattle. That's what it was that night. And it was a beautiful thing walking up and down that the main street there. Seahawks. Get it again. It should be everything. That should be everything. I hope it is. Thomas says, I got the feeling that Carroll goes to that president position and Seattle hires an upcoming coach or hires Waldron if the offense goes right. I'd like to believe it does go that way. And when you do look at Carroll, above Bud Grant, one of his kind of heroes in coming along as a coach was Bill Walsh. And that was the transition that Bill Walsh made with San Francisco. Maybe he can see an equivalent thing that he would go and do if they happen to not be able to get the same kind of success this year. I would be hopeful of that because that would keep Russell back in the fold. Tommy, with how big and DK is, I'm saying let's go old school and put him on defense once in a while. Guy's legit the size of a defensive end at this point and way faster. He'd be freakish on defense, he would, but you'd probably get beat up over on that side of the ball too. So it'd be probably pretty tough there where you get him maybe reduced in his effectiveness on the offensive side of the ball, even if he's able to give you some flashes. And it's kind of late in the game, but yeah, you never know. That freakish size, maybe he could do something. Ramon, Carroll won't kick the bucket even if he does retire. Knowing him, he'd sit for 3 months and take another NFL job, saying that the offer is just too good to resist. Always another team in need. Yeah, you're probably landing pretty right on point with that, Ramon. That's I get a little bit of that feeling too. I don't think he's a guy who wants to retire. I don't think he's got that in his mind at all. Lorraine, too bad Tamarion Terry is a dumbass. I think he would have made the team. Lorraine, I agree with you. I was really enthused by that guy's potential. I watched a lot of his tape coming out of college, that 2019 season at Florida State. He really put some tape out there that made you jump up out of your seat and go, wow, this kid's got some talent. This kid's not just a run-of-the-mill undrafted rookie free agent. This is a kid that, if he went out and shined like he did in his 2019 season, 2020, if he wasn't fighting through a meniscus injury, if there weren't the off-the-field concerns, this is a first-round talent. And a high-end first-round talent at that. But it does look like something dodgy might have happened. The only thing I'll say at that, Lorraine, is that this did come back from 2018, and it's long down the well for them bringing this back to the forefront. And them grabbing 10 other people in this situation makes me a little bit wondering, a little skeptical as to maybe what's entirely going on there with the situation. Ramon says, Carroll is already the Seahawks executive VP, right? That's part of the problem. They don't need him as president. He has too much power as it is. It'd be more of, so it'd be more of the desperation situation for me moving him to presidency, Ramon, and you're right. He would be an executive. I think he would dial back being the overarching head of everything. It'd be more of a purely executive role where it's not, normally the executive above a guy like John Schneider would be more of a figurehead position, a general guider. He wouldn't be the guy in running everything from the background. And I don't think John Schneider would really want him in that position to be essentially having more micromanagement of the roster and personnel. He would be there as more of a consultant type in that position and role. That's historically how it's gone when you move the coach into that type of position there. So I don't know if he would. He probably would want to have too much effect on it. I think it's probably a leap to say he's willing to go to the president's role. I think many of us, Ramon, at this point are just kind of desperate to do what it's going to be able to take to keep Russell here long term and to keep him in that fold. And maybe we're just being hopeful in that respect. Bodine, haha, you just roasted the crap out of the other division fans coming here saying they get better, but they never have anything backed up. They sound like casual fans with not that much knowledge. I don't want to disparage him, but there's sometimes I've asked him over and over again on multiple streams. Rams fan, throw Matt Stafford out the window for a second, because we can all acknowledge that he'll make you a little bit better at the quarterback position. Is that it? Is that all you got? Is that all you got? Kind of seems like that's all you got, and I think it is. I think it was. I think it'll prove out to be, and I think they're hitching your carts to the Stafford wagon, who's not won one playoff game in his whole career, and saying it's all Detroit's fault. Again, the simplistic approach to looking at the team is one that can make you more incorrect more often than not, I think. Garcia says, I hated the Effetti first round pick. I did too, Garcia. I hated the fact, too, that they kept him at right tackle when he really looked like he was going to have some issues with the right tackle dealing with those edge rushers, and you got him over into guard, and maybe he had some potential at least there. But Seattle just wanted to force that thing in at right tackle with him. Never really worked. Thomas says, I think if Seattle was consistent by keeping Effetti at guard, he would have been better than moving him all over. Wow, you guys are reading my mind, Thomas. Read my mind. Manuel, the Hawks Steelers is in Pittsburgh. I forgot about that, Manuel. Yeah, that is in Pittsburgh. Well, that'll make it a little less fun to go to. It'll still be a cool game, but I mean, a little bit. You got to deal with all those Steeler fans. Are you going to risk wearing your Seahawk gear into the stadium? You're gonna go into the jaws of the beast on that one. Emmanuel says, I'll definitely give you a report, Brandon. A couple of streamer podcasters have asked for a report as well. I got you, bro. Hey, thank you, Manuel. And shoot a couple of shots if you can out there on the field. We'll put them up for you if you can beforehand. But yeah, I want to hear what's going down on the scene. Ramon says, yeah, I see your point on the presidency. I wasn't thinking. No, it's smart of you to think, though, as well, Ramon, that Pete wouldn't necessarily just give up that power. I mean, when has Pete just willingly given up power? We haven't seen it yet. We're hoping he'll do a little bit of it on the offensive side of the ball this year and bring in Waldron and not forcing his old playbook onto Waldron like they forced his old playbook onto Schottenheimer. But we don't know that he's going to do that for sure. And we know he's going to have those tendencies always to lean back and try to control things to the micromanage level when really he should be more lasering in on high-level stuff. And I think Coach Carroll is a high-level guy, as a motivator, as a recruiter, as a guy to be a sounding board for John Schneider and to not necessarily be in there every day at that point and making that transition as he goes into his 70s. I think it's a natural progression. But whether he really embraces it or not, it remains to be seen. Truth is, I know it. Russ has been in the league 9 seasons and still hasn't had good pass blocking. This is the season, perhaps. This is the season This could be the year. I mean, this is the best pass blocking unit that you have assembled at any one time. Gabe Jackson, first and foremost, is a pass protector. Dwayne Brown, first and foremost, is a pass protector. Even Ethan Posick, I would say first and foremost, is probably a bit better of a pass protector than he is a run blocker. This has been a shift in philosophy because they were fundamentalist in their approach to going for run blockers first, and if you can pass block, that'll be cool too. I mean, it was really like that through those years with Tom Cable especially, and it started to move a little bit now. It's not all the way there. I certainly would feel a little bit better with a little bit more on that offensive line, but they're going in that direction, which is, even if it's just a small step, is an encouraging step. HB says, thoughts on our running back room? Think we need another piece? I do think we need another piece, HB. Part of what the theme has been on this live stream show is to upgrade this team by any means necessary. There's a variety of different positional groups that you can upgrade that are in a state of what I would call just good enough. Just good enough to kind of get by. Just good enough to be a little bit better than average. What about pushing that envelope further, harder? What about making it a true strength of the team? So when I look at the running back position, if a guy like Saquon Barkley was available, he's probably not. Probably not a guy you could go get. They would probably ask for too much in a trade. But if you could go pick that guy up in a trade, sure, I'll look at a guy like that. Nothing's off the table in that respect. When I look at the running back room right now, I like what I see in Carson. I'd like to limit his carries because I think he does break down. And I want him healthy for the playoffs. So I don't want 300 touches this season for Chris Carson. I'd like to mix the carries up between him and Rashad Penny. A lot of hope for Penny in this offense, man. I have a lot of hope, HB, for Penny in this offense, specifically hitting that outside runs. The two stats I always bring up with Rashad Penny is go back to his best season in 2019. And on outside runs over the tackle, essentially zone runs that would be outside either outside on his inside shoulder or outside shoulder, he averaged 7 yards a carry. On pitch plays, outside runs, pure outside runs past the tackle's shoulder, he averaged 8 yards a carry. If they can tap back into that, the guy can be effective again. In games in which he's had over 10 carries in a game, there's been about 6 games in Rashad Penny's career where he's had over 10 carries, and most running backs will tell you, I tend to need a couple carries to get myself going. It's tough to come into a game and get 3 or 4 carries and be really effective like that. I need a couple to kind of get the feel for things, to get my sweat, to get hit a couple times, to learn what the defense is trying to do against me. And in those 5 or 6 games that Rashad Penny's had 10 carries or more, he's averaged over 5 yards a carry. So there's a lot of evidence here to believe that if you give him some carries and if he can stay healthy, he's a guy who can be very effective for you. So I like the top 2 guys, but we need a little bit more depth there, man. I have no faith right now in Homer or DJ Dallas. I think both of those guys are okay, but I certainly don't think any of those guys are a huge boon benefit to this team right now as we stand. Garcia, what do I think of Kerry Hyder Jr.? Kerry Hyder Jr. is a competent pass rusher. He's a veteran pass rusher, something that's been a little bit missing from the signings of what they've looked at in recent years. You look at last year, you got Benson Mayo and Bruce Irvin in free agency, and that was it. And the year before that, you went with Ziggy Ansah, and then you had to go out and get Jadeveon Clowney right at the start of the year because you got in a desperate state because LJ Collier wasn't nothing. Well, now this year, you went out and got Kerry Hyder when you already had a lot of stuff here already kind of set up, which is going to allow him to fit into a rotational role. The thing I like with him is he's not a one-trick pony, and he adds to you a lot of flexibility. He was the 3rd best edge defender in the entire NFL against the run game last year, which means on his bottom level, you could have him as an early down run defender as just the base way you use him, and that would be really effective. He also gave you 8.5 sacks last year, so he's also a very competent pass rusher. He's more of a high motor type pass rusher. He's not going to win quick, but then he is also a guy who could maybe even give you some flexibility moving in that NASCAR package to the 3-tech as a defensive tackle, as a pass rusher at that point. And maybe he could be effective from that role as well. He runs about 275, so he's got a little bit of that extra, like Michael Bennett-like girth to him to handle being kicked to the inside. But I love this signing. They got him for really cheap rate. A very competent guy. He's going to should be a benefit to this pass rush and allowing them to fit more into those rotational roles, which just lets those guys stay fresher that much longer throughout the course of the game, and more importantly, over the course of the season and deep into the playoffs. Garcia, Gabe Jackson's a beast. Gabe Jackson is a beast, especially in pass protection, Garcia. Especially in pass protection, that's one place that's going to help Russell Wilson, and he's going to appreciate a lot. The guy's been very good in pass protection throughout his career. He's so big you can't get around him. I mean, he's as wide as he is tall, and he's tall. But I love Gabe Jackson, love the trade. It was a good deal. I would have liked to have gotten maybe more of a purified left guard, so you're not having to flip Damian Lewis over to left guard, because I think there's going to be some struggles there. But maybe the option just wasn't there for them to bring a left guard in. Emmanuel says, of course I'm wearing my Seahawks stuff and will be wearing it loud and proud. I ain't scared of no Steelers fans. Might wear my Walter Jones white jersey. Ooh, just standing out in the crowd, huh, Emmanuel? Just a sea of black and you're the one sea of black jerseys and the one white jersey in there with the big smile. I'm gonna be looking for you in that. I'm gonna be looking for you in the stands. You're gonna stand out. Well, God bless you. I've gone into a couple stadiums wearing Seahawks jerseys, and man, fans can be well, rightfully so, man. If you step into the enemy's territory wearing somebody else's jersey, you got it coming. So, hey, bring it. But that's what I love to hear, Emmanuel. I love it. I want my subs are confident. They don't care. They'll go anywhere in their Seahawk gear. Hell yeah. D Nugget says, go Hawks. Go Hawks, D Nugget. RW3 Undercover Goat. I really think that this is the year the offense and defense clicks at the same time. This hybrid offense gives me hope that the team doesn't stutter. And if Russ keeps momentum, the chat updated. And the team keeps momentum from a balanced playbook. I could see it happening this year. The thing that you have coming into this year that you haven't in recent years, let's go to the defensive side of the ball, for instance. The defense took a while to click in both the last two seasons, 2019, 2020. Why 2019? It seemed like really it was Quandre Diggs' addition by midseason that really brought things together for you. And then last year, of course, it was kind of the Carlos Dunlap and Jamal Adams coming back from his injury, which kind of brought things together for you at that time. You're not going in as much at a positional group in a deficient state as you have in previous years on the defensive side of the ball that leave those glaring holes that let you get picked on early on in the year. And also on the offensive side of the ball. I think you've done enough from a depth standpoint to be good out the gate from that side of the ball and not have those seem issues of you feeling yourself and finding your way around through the first part of the season. You have some continuity there on the offense, which should allow you to hit the ground running. I agree. I think we'll see wider swaths of the season, RW3, where both sides of the ball kicking together. And let's not undersell the special teams, which is going to be probably the best in the league or damn near the best in the league. When you have all three of those things cooking at once, we probably will, dare I say it? Dare I say it? We probably will actually see a couple of blowouts this season. Tommy says, Russ and Pete are so much alike, it's kind of scary. Hard-headed, believe in their methods, not willing to give an inch or money or power. Both raw, bright side guys. Might be why they argue sometimes. Yeah, I think so as well, Tommy. I think so as well, especially as Russ has gotten more confident and more established. It's one thing when he's a rookie and kind of a young guy coming along to the older guy. But it's part of why and what you said in that I think is why they need to stay together, why they're at their best and why their career has its best potential together, because there is a little bit of a lightning in bottle here, chemistry between these two guys, even when it seems like it doesn't exactly correspond together. Doesn't mean it can't be brought back together. It just means it's kind of had some falling apart a little bit, and maybe for rightful reasons. And maybe it had to go through that evolution of process to reach a fixed point of things. But that's part of why I do gravitate towards that a little bit. Garcia says, Stephon Gilmore for Pierre Desir, 5'6" Sawin. Fifth and sixth rounder. I would do that. If the Patriots will take it, Garcia. Truth is, I know it says Penny's knees or hamburger. I don't trust him. Well, he's only had one torn ACL, and last year it was just a little bit of the injuries that correspond to the torn ACL. I mean, they've got to reset the ligament that could then pull on other muscles at that point, cause muscle pulls. It's not unusual when you're coming off the first year of that injury, but I still have some hope for him. He's going to prove a year, man. If he wants to make it this year, he wants to get a contract this offseason, he's going to have to show out this season. There's no more free rides. Tommy Eden says, this is Russ's MVP year. I'm calling it now. It actually gets one vote. He actually gets one vote this year, let alone the MVP. That means we go to the Super Bowl. Go Hawks. I love your prediction, Tommy. I'm on board with it, man. He's got the stage set for him to be there. He's got the talent to do it. They got the playmakers to do it. It is there if he can get it. If things can break right for them, he could get it. Hard to see some of those East Coast voters, though. They get weird about that stuff. The truth is, I know it. Seattle took Penny over Dalvin Cook in the draft. Yeah, they did. And they aren't in the same class. That is true. They took also Nick Chubb. I'd love Nick Chubb coming out. I thought he would have been the perfect back for us. I don't like taking first round running backs anyway. I just don't. But if I was going to have to in that year, then at least Nick Chubb made sense. Bill Hawks 2021 says, I know you're hoping for Penny. I just cannot. Injuries and confidence are not his main issues. Injuries and confidence are his main issues. Hope I'm totally wrong. You're not alone, Go Hawks 2021. There's a lot of fans that are out on Penny and didn't like him as a selection when he was picked. And they've been proven right throughout his time period here. And I can't argue with that. I can't. The one thing I will push back on is just injury-wise. He's had 2 injuries, really. He had a broken hand and he had a torn ACL. And neither of those 2 injuries are connected. And in between the time of those injuries, he's been an effective running back in this league. There are things that confidence you might be right on. Confidence could be a thing. I think some of it's commitment. The front office hasn't exactly committed to giving him a lot of carries. They've leaned really hard on Chris Carson. And that's part of why I have some of the optimism I kind of still do with him. Standard champion, what's your fiery hot take for the upcoming season? Seahawk related or not? Oh my goodness. A fiery hot take for the upcoming season. Aaron Rodgers is not going to play for Green Bay next year. I don't know if that's a fiery hot take, but I'm going Aaron Rodgers will not be playing for Green Bay next season. I'll think if I got another one on above that standard champion. That's the one off the top of my head as a hot take. I also think that the NFC West is going to be weaker than people are thinking. It's another one of my hot takes. I feel like I got an even more risque hot take, though, that I could sell out there. I'll think about it. See if I got something. Garcia says 2020 is the best draft in a while. Yeah, it was. It was a good draft. That was a really good draft. They did well, not really, but it's a good draft and it's got some potential there, Garcia. We still got to make sure that some of it taps out with the Darrell Taylor, Colby Parkinson pick, DJ Dallas. What do we got there with that? But look, Damian Lewis is a potential Pro Bowl offensive lineman, which you haven't drafted here in 10 years. Darrell Taylor could be a player for you. I feel pretty good about last year's draft. And part of that, though, is as well, just they've done not so good in recent drafts. That's almost as why 2020 was as good as just the recent drafts were so bad. Truth is, I know it. Penny was out playing Carson before he got hurt, but that knee ain't ever going to be the same. Might not. Some guys can come back the same. Some guys lose a step. That's true. I think last year it's a little bit of the injuries he had where the soft muscle tissue pulls that you get because the ligament gets stretched and then it pulls on the corresponding other areas and then that can cause muscle pulls. And sometimes that's why it takes that extra year to get over that injury. I know with medical science we just think you bounce right back, but sometimes it does take a little bit of extra time to come through. Emmanuel, I wouldn't mind the defense leading the team the first 3 to 4 games of the season with new offense being installed. Offense won't be awful, but I think the D will be a step or 2 ahead of the O. Solid point, Emmanuel. We do know with offensive coordinators, it can sometimes tend to take them a year to get everything implemented the way they want to get it implemented and get it effective out the gate. I do wonder if, Emmanuel, we might have a little bit more immediate returns because of the fact that this offense is going to be such a sea change from the old one and that old offense was so antiquated and had so much tape on it and teams knew so well how to attack it that you're sort of taking that blackboard of all those notes and you're wiping it clean from scratch, saying now you guys all got to start over. And if that doesn't help your effectiveness in the immediacy in the start of the year right out the gate, where it might not normally, just changing from one offense to the other. Goax 2020 says knee injuries can be real tricky. I've had 15 of them and no, sadly, and they can take a full 12 months to heal correctly on average. That's it. And there's the thing is, Goax, is that there's these stories that come down the pike, like Adrian Peterson when he tore his ACL and then came back and had an MVP the next year. And people go, okay, well now medical science has gotten into where you can just bounce right back. And then I kind of almost want to say, yeah, if you got some HGH pumping through your bones, you can get it back in a year, maybe. Subtle shot at Adrian there. Subtle shot. Shots fired. But it does tend to take a little bit of time. And again, the fact that he didn't have a knee injury in college, didn't have any knee injuries prior to that knee injury he sustained, it's a one-off. And that gives me a little more confidence when it is a one-off and it's not something that you've continually come back to again and again and again. Truth is, I know it. DJ Dallas had a great game for a rookie last year. He played with some savvy and toughness. I like his upside. Yeah, he had a couple of moments. I'm not there with you. Truth is, I know it. I'm just not. He doesn't run with a lot of force. He can't drag tacklers, can't fall forward, can't really break tackles. If you get an arm on him, you're pulling him down. He was rated as being the best pass protecting running back in all of college football last year, yet he was completely whiffing in pass protection. His hands look good. Former wide receiver convert. I'll give him that. But outside of that, I didn't see a whole lot else beyond that. RW3, the GOAT, Undercover GOAT. Laughing out loud, I was thinking Aaron takes a year off and keeps his check. I feel like he's just showing off to everyone to prove by going on vacation and hosting Jeopardy. Pat McAfee, he'll opt out. I think he'll opt out as well. I think that the drafting of Jordan Love last year got stuck deep in him, and I think there's been a little bit of it's not just Jordan Love. There's been stuff going back and forth between that front office and Rodgers for years there, and I think that I think he's not. I don't think he's faking. I don't think he's got some deep desire where he has to play this next year. I think he would be willing to take a year off to force the Packers' hands and take some control back in the situation. And that could lead to being opting out. I would not be surprised, but that would be my hot take. I don't have a lot of good hot takes at the moment, but I mean, that'd be my one. Tommy says, hot take, Aaron Rodgers is the next quarterback of the Vikings. Not next year, 2 years from now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And maybe, I got to feel like the Packers would eventually move on from him and take him and move him to an AFC team. And that'd be eventually how they would do it. Garcia says, I tore my ACL and Achilles. It sucks. Can't do nothing. Oh man, I feel for you, Garcia. I'm getting older and I play a lot of basketball right now just to stay in shape. And it's the thing that is always in the back of my mind with the ACL and Achilles especially, because it's like when you tear it, it's all that rehab and then it's supposedly never the same. I don't know. They say it's like walking in a boot when you get over the Achilles, that it feels like you're walking in a boot. Just brutal, man. Brutal. I hope you get better. I hope it turns around there for you on it. All right, well, we are 3.5 hours in here. I think I'm going to wrap it on up. Another nice, successful stream here right before the 4th of July. Just post any last comments or questions you might have here on the chat. I do appreciate all of my new members coming on in on the YouTube side of it and over on Patreon as well. Devin Martzall, thank you so much. Emmanuel Mendahane, appreciate you. D Nugget, Randall McDaniel, Paul, thank you for your donations here on the chat. I think I missed one other person here. Make sure I'm getting everybody. Appreciate all you guys for donating. We will be back up and running by next Sunday at the latest. I'll try to get up and do another stream next Thursday. Maybe we get some news coming down the pike. Seattle makes a signing or something goes down. Maybe Jamal Adams extension. We can only pray. We can only hope. But we'll see what comes down. But probably Thursday, Sunday at the latest on the next stream. Other than that, I'm working on right now the best mic'd up, some great mic'd up moments in Seahawks history. If you guys got any ideas, I'm also trying to turn over my head on what I'm going to do in the next great Seahawks moment video. So it's time for me to get to work on my next one with that. I'm just not certain on that. Roxanne, you've had some good suggestions with that on the Broncos game in the 80s. I'm thinking of doing one maybe a little bit more recent, but if you guys got some suggestions on that, please post it down in the comments section on that. Tommy says, tore my Achilles and ended my college football career. Yeah, one's one that even with the medical innovations, they still haven't quite solved that one to me. That one is one that's still, if it bites you, you're bit, It still is the Achilles. The Achilles is still an apt name for it. RW3 says, great content. Thanks for streaming. Thank you for joining me, RW3. Appreciate your hop in the chat, being part of this. Tommy Ian says, question, what is the future of Seahawks scouting come this season? Pre-scouting games, what are your plans? Once we get to the season, Tommy Eden, I'm not going to lie. The secondary Seahawks scouting channel is going to be a little bit to the back burner. I know it's been back burner right now, but I'm going to definitely get some more videos here before the season, but I need to ramp up more before the season. I'm going to start doing some college stuff on college prospects before the year. Once we get to this season, the main two aspects will be looking at college prospects and then looking at trade targets. So I will do a little bit in season when those things come up, especially when we're coming up to the trade deadline and we're looking at somebody. I'll post a video over there and do a quick breakdown on the guy. But I will be dialing that back a little bit because this season I'm planning on hitting this like almost full-time hard this year. So we're going to be doing 2 streams during the season. I'm going to try to get a Hawks Nest episode up every single week of the year as well. So that's going to put me easily into about 40 hours easily a week of being on, doing stuff on the channel plus the normal job I got to do on the side. So I'll probably be pretty taxed at that point in time. Long-term, be honest with you, I'm going to be looking, Tommy, probably long-term to expand on that Seahawks scouting channel and bring others in to help me create content on that channel. So I'm still kind of thinking on my designs on that one, but I do want to build that channel up, and I was thinking of that from that lane of things. That's part of why I wanted to do it a little bit separately from this channel as well. Garcia says 20 minutes later, Stephon Gilmore, Seahawks. I wish. I'll be back live, Garcia, if we do. Standard Champion, I know you've got some head-turning takes to share. Have a great 4th. Hey, you do too, Standard Champion. I'll get you some hot takes on a stream here soon. I'll try to put a list together of some dicey ones and maybe more NFL centric for the upcoming season. A little bit of going back up against the tide, and I like going against those national narratives that exist out there. I like going after those, especially the ones that are just so wrong at every turn. Much like that the Seahawks are going to finish 3rd in the division. That's silliness. Roxanne, I appreciate you. You have a good 4th of July. All of you have a great 4th of July. A happy, safe 4th of July. Thank you to everyone for watching. And if you are watching this on replay, please do slam, if you could, for me on that like button. If you're not subscribing, come on, subscribe. Come on aboard USS Hawks Nest. We got plenty of room. I got extra chambers below in the cabin. We're having a party above deck later on. Let's go. And please, none of you ever forget, don't you ever forget, even in the dead dearth of the offseason,